What is going on? It is SCP CRNP, aka Lack of Lepers, and we are alive. Yes, we are alive and well, doing fine. How are you? Good, thanks. So we're back. Haven't done this in a while, in a week, but we are back. I took a vacation. Thank you. I took a vacation, and that was fun. Went to the beach and really got away from everything with, of course, a little help from WikiDot, which broke this week, the tail end of last week. So before we get started tonight, just a little tour, a guided tour of what we'll do. So I had the wonderful, wonderful privilege of having some buddies, Pixelated Harmony and the one and only Almer Duck, to look at some of these articles for me in my absence. So I would like to welcome to the stage the one, the only Harmony. What's going on?
Hello.
Hey, how you been?
I've been doing it pretty well, I would have to say.
Well, good. Your mic is coming through nice and crisp. So
I got a new potato phone microphone.
Yeah, it sounds great. All right, so thank you so much for being here, and I can't thank you enough for looking at these articles this week.
It was fun. Alma picked out all the ones that I would wanted to read. I haven't looked at theirs, but almost none of mine had RH, all the stuff that I like. It's the old format, kind of how it's all been, and you know, I was like, I don't have to wade through the visual diarrhea on the page.
Yeah, way to go. You got them classic tastes, the classic sensibilities.
A little bit.
That's nice. Well, good. So, I really appreciate that. Let me kind of get away with the family. So that means so much to me. So I really appreciate that. So what we'll do is, so obviously as we're looking on the screen here, let me share the screen so that the viewers can look along. So we will see a sudden drop-off of SCPs around the 18th of May. That's, of course, the Thursday-ish that it went down. So that week, this was a week ago today, we did about 4 of these articles because we were able to access them through the Wayback Machine, and I decided to leave the rest so that we could look at those visually. So we do have about 10 or 11 or so of those from 2 weeks ago that I will get to, but first, especially Harmony, in case you want to get out of skedaddle and do other things, why don't we start with the articles that have been released since that time, so starting on the 25th of May, and beyond. So Harmony, why don't we start with just the ones that you took a look at, and I will pull them up, and you can just go to town.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I did SCP 184 Deutschland, SCP 905, SCP 101 French, SCP 6218, SCP 733, and SCP 8897.
Okay, I got most of those. 6897.
I probably should also look at titles for, but I did not.
Okay. No, I do that at the very last thing. In fact, I almost kind of want to not know the title until I'm done with it,
Because
the title always it can be the tell sometimes. Okay, so let's just start with a few of these that I pulled up, and we'll pull up as you go. But let's start with SCP-184-DE. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So the actual premise of the article is pretty simple, but not a lot of little things. It's got like all the foundational architecture that I would really like in an article, but it doesn't do enough with the interesting parts of its idea. So it's my summary that I wrote down is spiders that in spider when they jump on you, having emotional release from that state.
Okay,
so there's a lot of and then.
So say that one time, the microphone kind of cut out a little bit just during that.
That's okay. That was just a one sentence bit here. I had a really short summary of the article. The contents are actually pretty short, but there's a lot of ideas that I think could have been done with it. It's a spider, turns into a spider, and then has some kind of emotional process that you're released from that state.
So
and the last line of the description, you read that last line of the description.
All right, so it says, the only other known method to transform a subject back is a honest expression of deep affection towards the subject.
I kind of love that.
Towards themselves?
Towards I don't know. I'm not sure what they're referring to. I just love that that vibe of that hell of a line.
Yeah, it is. It's a heck of a stinger right there at the end of the description.
But then they don't really do anything with it, so I'm kind of upset because the whole addendum is more about how it transforms versus emotional turning back. That is the part of the mission. Like there's something about double murder there, but I'm like, this is violence. It's not really an honest expression of affection.
Yeah, so structure, it looks like it kind of tips, in this line, like you say, towards being a really good direction, but then you say it sort of backtracks just a little bit back to something else.
It doesn't do anything. The addendum kind of does, but not really. Because it's still just violence.
I see. Okay.
So,
well, this is.
I really want to like it. I really want to like it. And also, the last one, I like the line. Throws in the Also, I thought it was how much it pays attention for spiders.
Really? Okay, so it really plays on that.
No. Like out of universe, like it's distracting because the image has a fade on it that you have to see.
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah.
It's just because it's not part of the article. Because if people are looking at spiders.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't like
warning there yet.
Yeah, I see that. Let's look at that real quick. So content warning spiders. So I don't know. Have we gotten a little haywire with the content warnings? It's like, hey, spooky.
I feel like it must be a standard way to do it. So this is really bad. You need to have an offset or a splash page or something.
Yeah. And so I don't like looking at spiders. I think that there's something just very atavistic in me that gets completely either grossed out or slightly uncomfortable. But actually, I think this is cute.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There's been one person that is involved in the SCP who actually was afraid of spiders that they would have needed something like this. Look at this article. Like if you pop spiders with a spider, eventually they would lose their marbles turning Anomaly.
Man.
I think. So here doesn't exist, but one person everyone of every whole life. So
it's tough.
I don't know.
Tough life. Waiting for that augmented reality where you can like apply a filter, some kind of blur to your everyday life, where every time you see a spider, it takes care of it for you.
But then you'll be for the blurry spot.
It's almost worse.
A little bit.
It's the knowledge of knowing what's behind that blur. So, okay, so the description is it's some himation, which is a piece of cloth worn as a mantle in classic antiquity. It's made of spider silk. So this looks pretty short. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. So what do you say? Do you recommend this read?
I cannot say I do. It has one line that I really like, and the rest is not super hot on. That one line is really strong.
Yeah, that is a cool line. That may be one of the best one-liners, especially if it's like the only hit of the ball game, kind of thing.
Yeah, you hit it on that one.
Yeah, just a solo walk-off right there.
Your team lost, man. Doing it.
That's it. That line is MVP caliber. Okay, well, cool. Well, if you don't like spiders, sorry about that. I had 2 content warning layers that I just blew through, so sorry about that. But that's SCP-184-DE, and check it out. I mean, can't be recommended, but it is short, so if you do want to check it out, maybe it won't be too much of a commitment to your time. So. All right, so moving on to the next one. I think the next one that you said, was it SCP-101-FR or something else?
That's on my list. Okay.
Let's hit it.
All right. So I kind of liked it. I didn't think I was going to like it. I ended up liking it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, let me interrupt you here. I already sort of feel that with you because I see the link to the SCP Wiki. Exactly.
But I read the whole thing and I was like, okay, you're kind of doing something new with it. You're kind of doing something different.
I'm intrigued.
Because what they did is different. They included all of the different branches inside of this thing, and also on top of that, the real fish thing, Operation Scarlet Rose, that you see it now, is that like the foundation is the things that are wrong with Wiki are actually caused by the foundation in sabotaging it. The SCP Wiki database leak that appears their operation by making sure all critical information is wrong. The website breaks all the time. And like, okay, all right.
Yeah. So it kind of plays a little bit off of the trauma of the past week.
Absolutely, definitely.
We knew we were going to see some of these articles. It just was a question of.
This is one.
Oh, this is one of the recommendations you say?
Yeah, this is definitely one of my recommendations.
Yeah, so interesting also at the end here, I don't know if you can explain this one, but it says the addendum, the article has been successfully removed from the French, German, and yada, but each of these has something wrong with the actual word. The French has a, I guess, less than sign in place of the C, and there's a dollar sign where the S should be in the Chinese branch. What's going on there?
I'll be honest, I did not notice that when I read it.
Very curious.
I'm I have no idea what's going on there.
So it sort of takes a little bit of a meta position, but it doesn't actually go like.
You know what it is? They have the computer corruption other parts. I think part of the operation rows.
Ah, okay.
Because they have that right there. Talking about rows.
Okay. Interesting.
How
Okay.
did I not notice that?
Maybe on, I don't know if you were on mobile. Maybe it wasn't as. Okay, and then it looks like. Let me see. We'll pull this up just a little bit here. It looks like each of these will go to. Yeah, it goes to. Oh, I see. So each one goes to that branch's. Wow. So they've translated this article across all of the branches.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and each of these links go, because, if you look at the bottom, I don't know if you can see that on the screen. I don't think you can. But this will go to the Chinese wiki. It has the translation there.
Okay, so this actually rules.
I mean, this is seriously commitmental.
Yeah, this is
Holy
awesome.
hell. Yeah, so this is it in the Chinese branch. And it
Just
goes
when
on.
I thought I could have already impressed, they're even more.
So the notes, the discussion page says that the author, Dr. Macro and Flops, Floppy Phoenix, aka Lieutenant Flops, translated this article a while ago, and I present to you the most popular article on the French branch. So that is cool. The original author, I'm sorry, is Dr. Gemini. So that's nice to see. That's nice to see. Wow, I'm just shocked at the commitment here, because you have to. I guess you don't have to translate it. But yeah, very cool. Okay, so this sounds like it kind of tries to go meta, but I always enjoy seeing meta articles that don't proclaim themselves as such. Like with the garish pataphysics logo and it announcing itself almost as if with trumpets.
Just expecting you to do that.
Yeah, almost like dazzling you and wowing you with like camera flashes.
Are you tell you?
Yes, exactly. So if this seems like that to me, maybe it's a recommendation for you. Just it kind of tries to be meta.
This is a strong thumbs up.
Cool. Well, I will definitely go back and check this. Like I said, I actually haven't read these, so I'm listening along with the audience to you on these. So I will go back and look at this one for sure. It seems like it has a decent rating for being just this week too. So always happy to see that.
It's so weird seeing things plus being a rating because I came up in the SCP time at a weird time that you could always see it like comment plus 30 plus 50 for like an average article what plus 23 is now.
Really?
Because that was the only time the balance like there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of people reading it, a lot of people coming in all the time. So that was what we had. That was a period of time. It was a balance ratio from like 2012 to 2014.
Yeah, I think it's funny because back in the day we think about 23 being just a ravishing success. Because there seems to be some sort of inflation when it comes to the actual rating itself. But I want to kind of harp on that for a second because we do like to bring out other things in the show. It's interesting because as I go through these articles, as I've been reading every article for the last month or so, something that I've noticed is that it doesn't seem as though the standards that we might expect of the SCP Wiki are able really just logistically to keep up with the sheer number of articles coming out. That kind of ties into what you're saying with, sort of these things getting sort of relative crumbs to what would have been in a more, in a site that had a little more engagement with a little more proper balance that wasn't so top heavy.
Yeah, you actually had to read everything that was coming out. Yeah. I think it was also that a lot of people were writing complete garbage. After you read a containment breach, there was a lot of real garbage all the time.
Yeah, and I don't know how this would happen, but I would have loved to have seen, and maybe this is a little caveat for another containment fiction community out there, I would love to have seen sort of a difficulty adjustment as these things happened, as something like containment breach happened, as something that really flooded this site. Let's up the ante just a little bit. Let's keep the standards afloat with the current coming in.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what I guess what the RPC is already given them, but they've also never had serious panic for like 2 months of their existence. They might be a bad example.
Yeah,
because it doesn't also everything they possibly could.
Yeah, they really don't want to be noticed. They want to stay as hidden as possible, is what I get the vibe.
Yeah, they put up the armor. There's spikes on. They're like, no, we don't come near us.
Yeah, it's almost like that explains their character. They put that up so that I guess people are not interested.
Just big sign that we're racist.
I guess it's working. So if that's what you got to do to not be popular in containment fiction, that's just an embarrassment of riches right there.
Yeah.
Speaking of the back rooms, we could talk about that too. But okay, but let's move on. So tell me the next one on your list. Let's go. Let's do it that way.
Well, we're kind of jumping around my list. We jumped from my first one to my third one. My second one is SCP 6905.
6905. Pulling it up now. Here we go. Okay, tell us about this one.
All right. So my notes, I said it was a fungal gas creature who emerged to people hunting site.
Hunting
Anomaly doesn't freak out while he does that.
So he gives hunting advice.
Yeah, he's a humanoid that gives you advice on and encouragement on how to shoot in the woods.
Interesting. Is there any explanation as to why it is a gaseous humanoid that does that?
He's coming from the mushroom.
Oh, okay, so like a spore.
Yeah.
That's kind of a funny idea. I kind of like.
I like the visual. I definitely visualize I can imagine like the spore off from just kind of humiliating first-person shoot.
It's like, hey man, you were wide left, man. You shouldn't do that. All right, well, so what do you think about this one on the whole?
All right, so here I wrote that it was the kind of conflict was very basic, and it was supposed to be like the character interactions on research named Eli Hall. The last and it ended with the style thing.
Oh, it does.
And also had a note that I think because the capitalized type of the mushroom once nowhere else. So it confused me probably whether if it was a proper noun, if it was mushroom type or something else.
I see.
Kind of me off at the end there.
I see.
And so my overall thought on it was I thought the character that Eli Hall was boring. Pretty much exists to give 69 pound bounce. It has a bit of a personality. Something going on that never really followed up on because Eli is boring. Nothing happened. The thing with the daughter at the end, it happened for like 2 seconds and is really cryptic. That's what the capitalization they can do as well.
Oh yeah, see it. The chanterelle mushroom. Yeah.
Like why did you capitalize it there? What did he mean for here?
Yeah, it's best not to read. It's best not to read into capitalizations like that. I've learned because most of the time it's people just like they didn't catch it. They don't know. Okay. Well, this looks pretty short. I mean, everything is very terse. The containment procedures are maybe a paragraph. The description is maybe a paragraph. I noticed
the interview is interesting.
Yeah, it really seems to be the heart of the article here. How's the dialogue, would you say, and the flow?
I would say that the flow is fine. Actually, structurally, doesn't have any problems. Nothing really.
Okay.
This guy gives advice. Oh yeah. How you doing? Very nonchalant.
Okay.
Plays into the nonchalant thing. It feels. Now that I'm listening, it's a cop out. Just a way to make nonchalant should reacting to that reaction.
It's sort of like this, not really giving it the gravity that it should. Sort of almost immaturity of characterization.
Yeah, or just arrested development.
There you go. Okay, well, it is short. So, what do you say about this one? Recommend or no?
Would not recommend this one unless you were to write a boring dialogue section.
There you go. And the reception seems pretty fair. I think this is done better than our than the French one we just looked at, which I don't know if that's a matter of just INT bias or what. That's a shame though.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good. A lot better than the German one. That's at least.
Yeah. Anytime I see, good crit, I like to call it out and thank the person for it. And this individual, T. Rutherford, who we are all familiar with, who's actually a fan of the show. So thank you, T, for the words of encouragement that you gave me. Yeah, very kind. Yeah, very cool. We appreciated that. T. Rutherford says, I didn't mind it. It's a simple, well-told story with no glaring issues. The description is brief and effective, and the conprocs bait the mystery well enough, which, of course, is one of the whole points of the conprocs. And this is a discussion we were having in the SCF recently, is that I think half of the writing demographic at least SCP sort of has tried their hardest to handwave the conprocs away as something totally vestigial.
Which is sad.
Yeah, it is.
Bummer.
It is. I mean, because you can use it in so many great ways. In fact, if you look, this is a discussion for another time, but if you look at how the format sort of evolved from what it started as on 4chan, the conprocs were sort of a revelation. It was sort of like this technology that was slowly developed into the potential of what it could do. So I do appreciate T. Rutherford saying this, because the conprocs bait the mystery. That's really one of the main things you can do with it well.
Containment procedures keep and hammer-made it into grand reality. The last cool idea.
Ooh.
Containment procedures.
High stakes.
My hot take.
There you go. Hey, it's called containment fiction for a reason, isn't it?
Yeah. Tele was the first cool innovation, and they did granted reality anchored. And I can't think of a single thing that has been done since then.
It's hard. Now we'll say it this way. This is one of the things that was mentioned on this other side of the divide, argumentatively, who said that the conprocs are just, they need to go over the way of the dinosaur. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. That's really the bottom line. Now, does that mean you shouldn't do it, or you shouldn't try to get good at it, or you shouldn't try to find a way to get good at it? I mean, that doesn't sit well with me, just because it's hard.
Yeah, because you want to not put effort into that part.
Yeah, let's just skip it. Yeah, cheat code that thing. But so T. Rutherford had some similar things to say. So T says, even just what color the cloud was could have helped cement it in my mind. I could have used Yeah, so I could have used a bit more visual, tactile descriptions of the anomaly. Yeah, I mean, but if it had been in there, you may have said, oh, it's a green cloud. The story itself lacked emotional resonance to me, and the repeating phrase comes in too frequently, too close together to characterize the anomaly. There just isn't enough here to really endear the characters to me, to the point the inclusion of the daughter feels a tiny bit ham-fisted.
Come on, take the qualifier. Just with ham-fisted.
A tiny bit. It's just sort of
a
like
little bit.
Yeah, it's a euphemism of phraseology. Just kind of like a little bit.
Let's slide that one in there.
Soften that up for you just a little bit, buddy. Okay, so yeah, exactly. A little softball pitch there. So SCP-6905 can't get a recommendation from this show, but once again, we do like to note when they're relatively short. That way, if you do read it and it's not to your liking, at least it isn't a terrible waste of your time. So, all right, that was SCP-6905. Thank you, Harmony. Where are we going next?
Let's look. So we did 184. Yeah, we did. Just 65. French. My list is 6218.
6218. Okay.
This is definitely the longest that I looked at.
Oof.
I think it was also had any kind of ECS. It had the really small looking thing.
Yeah, I think that's one of my. It's easy to not like this when you are reviewing and having to read everything. But when there's an article that's just really, really long and it doesn't justify its length, that's just the worst. It's just the worst. But anyway, maybe this one does justify its length. So tell us about this one.
It's kind of middle ground. This is middle of the road, maybe. So my main Florida had a short one because I don't want to do play by the fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a serious high concept science fiction that becomes largely isolated and paranoid madness, messing with memory, which I wrote it didn't make any sense. What was real difficult. Made it hard to figure out. It was real hard to know what exactly was going on.
Okay, yeah. So let's just look at this.
And also, I had a long image up top reminds me of SCP 1000 every time I see it. That was the first one that did it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If you look at SCP 1000, it has a long thing that everybody just copies that formatting.
Wow. Well, that was a nice invention there. I did not know that was for 2000, but
Hammer
awesome.
Maiden, innovator.
Very, very. We took a look at Hammer Maiden in our magazine article a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know that Hammer Maiden came back and entered I think it was a 3000 contest as well. So nice to see that.
A good content.
So the description, the first sentence says, the SCP refers to a spherical body outside the observable universe that contains the full universe.
It's hell of a start.
Yeah. Which is we've seen this before. You know, I always think of the Men in Black, sort of the galaxy is on Orion's belt, you know, kind of thing. And there's a couple of there's a 001, I think, written by Quantum that sort of plays with this universe within the universe, sort of.
Is that the one that's like the curio cabinet?
It's like a Fabergé egg that has like a lock or something like that. Yeah.
That's one that you have to like shoot on to get it. My first one when I was 16, 17, I'm like, I don't understand what the hell you're trying to do here. But then I was like,
yeah, definitely an understated 001, but one of the first and really, really good. So, okay, all right. So I see some fancy pants redactions going on here with just that nice spider blur that we talked about here.
Like the goof here is messing with memory as they're coming and trying to take it out. I guess in the future, but it's also in the past. It's like have future technology. Basically, they're in the future.
Huh.
At least that's how I was. Like you like have like technology. You're basically thinking that future where when we had I guess technology inflation. Technology was faster.
I see a little bit.
In this universe.
I see a little bit of it's always interesting to see the what I call the remora. You know, remora are those little fish that like travel alongside the big ones that like eat things under skin. There's always like remora that's still happening on the wiki and it's not a bad thing. Remora is not a pejorative, but this sort of leftover small fish flying along that still include things like new departments, you know, as a result, fallout almost of the Department Con. This one is the Department of Discretion, which is new. I've never seen that one before, so that's an interesting inclusion. So, all right, well, this one sounds very heady. It feels just from what you've said, it sounds highly abstract and really kind of plays not only in the spatio dimension of layers and it's sort of the opposite direction of pataphysics, where instead of jumping up to the author layer, you create a new sublayer in your narrative itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and so it seems to also do that with time as well.
Yeah, I like it. It reminded me of the thing in terms of like kind of reflective, kind of paranoid atmosphere that read in the logs. I like that it was kind of but also the characters were really being fleshed out as much as they could have been.
Oh, okay.
Because the memory thing they're not really reliable perspective that you can grip on what's actually going on, and then there's like intelligent people. It's got a lot going on. I don't want to.
Interesting. Well, you said this is
my final verdict was a spacecraft well made in orange, but old as the way.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, just a lot of
effort.
Yeah, it looks very long. Let's take a peek over the scroll bar here. I mean, I'm several. I guess you'd call them addenda in, and we are.
It keeps going.
Oh boy, yeah. So answer me. I think you said this already, but it's sort of like mid-tier justification of its length. You'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that you don't feel like you wasted your time, but you also think like. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could have been more than what it was.
Yeah, we got 22 footnotes here. Just to those aren't always an indication of length and complexity, but they're a good heuristic, I think. I do like this. I do. One of the things I love about the SCP are the cleverness of the MTF names, and this one is called Jaeger bombers. I think I like that one a lot.
Nice.
All right, so would you recommend this read? Just all in all.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
All
right, it's got some things going on for it. Obviously, it looks clean. Nice black background. Not
so I guess that means I'm going to recommend 3 because I didn't think I was going to recommend that.
Little game time decision. Yeah. All right, we got an Archon class. That's always touchy, but all All right. Well, cool. Well, I'll look at this one too. And boy, what a length! But I'll find some time for it. So, all right. So that was 6281. I kind of want to look and see just if anyone has said anything about it. That is nice.
I think it's 6218.
Oh, sorry. 6218. You're correct. So this is somebody's first entry into the database.
Oh,
this is
wow.
their first SCP. So
Good job.
people seem to like. There's some spag issues. Someone say.
It's so weird to me seeing SCP only getting like 2 comments even now.
Yeah, that's wild. I did not realize that.
It used to be
that is crazy.
Comments, no fraud was
That is
not
crazy to think about.
even unusual at all. Everybody got that.
Yeah. Well, I think, like I said, the unfortunate thing is that, if you actually get into and dig and read, because the whole point of this show is that it's impossible to stay caught up with the SCP. There's just too much content. No one can read it. You see, like, even people who love this thing for years, like someone like Clef, I remember saying, who wrote something like, I'd love to stay up with the SCP, but I just can't. There's just too much stuff coming through.
It's a bottomless pit.
Yeah, it's like trying to take a sip out of a fire hydrant. So once again, I do appreciate your help. There's no way I could have done all this without
This is fun. I want to do it more often.
Yeah, I would love the help. I mean, in fact, anybody who wants to volunteer a few, I would be very happy to have them. So let's see, where are we going next?
Next on my list is 733J, and the other one that I think is Joe. I didn't really understand what. I think this is kind of an inside joke. You have to see how the wiki is functioning.
What is happening here? That looks like it just just fell down. Okay, so it kind of looks like it's okay. It just did a Tetris thing.
That's exactly okay. I'm glad you said that because it's exactly what I thought. I took about 15 minutes trying to figure out how to Tetris joke. It's not a Tetris joke.
Okay. That's just what I thought would be here, just from a glance.
We see even in my note, the animation is funny and reminds me of Tetris. So I don't find this one offensive or unfunny. I don't really feel like the joke was meant for me, though.
Yeah. I kind of can already tell that this is another one of those sort of like topical.
Alma has just messaged me that they are waiting. I'm going to send them the link to the
Oh, hell yeah. Alma can come. Alma took a spread of articles too. Hopefully they can come on in. But yeah, I'll talk about it while you do that. So it looks like, this already I can tell is a joke on the WikiDot servers going down. So obviously the whole page has collapsed, right? Everything's at the bottom. The description itself is an anomalous glitch that affects one of the SCP Foundation servers, where certain amounts of text or paragraphs appear at the bottom of the page. And then this last addendum says, shit, the servers went down. So... it looks to be sort of like just a topical joke.
I think that there's a punch. I think that it's referencing the path that I just do for.
So my question is, why does it Tetris away? Because
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that something is happening.
Yeah.
To draft. Reference on Twitter too.
Yeah.
Flops who unblocked me actually. And we followed
there. By the way, Flops follows this Twitch channel, which I always, when I saw that, I thought that it was just sort of like reconnaissance,
Well, maybe she thinks right.
Hey, more power to you. I've never really have a lot of bad things to say about Flops. I mean,
Flops not one of the worst ones.
Yeah, excellent CSS work as well. Okay, so let's
they that article that we put up earlier, the French one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good work from Flops always. Okay, so this author posts, hello everyone, thank you for reading.
Someone else. Okay, so we're not crazy. It's the Tetris thing.
Where's that? Oh, Tetris. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Once again, T. Rutherford. It's so nice to see these people. Swordlover 87's been doing this too. Just people who consistently show up in the comments. It just shows you they're paying close attention. It's nice to see that. So it took me 15 seconds to register what the pun was here, but it's certainly clever. I don't get it. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm just dumb. I got inspired by Dr. Asteria's tweet on seeing a cold-posted J about the whole incident. Okay, and probably WikiDot going down. And I got the idea to write this article. Huge thanks for the clinical text, making the addendas disappear like Tetris and Crowcat. For looking at this and giving me the idea. So it does have something to do with Tetris. I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I don't know what's about.
Okay. Well, this apparently has something going on, so it's above our heads. Phew. But it certainly is well received, I would say, for being however old it is. Oh, and we have Almer Duck.
Thank you, thumbs down. I don't get it.
Well,
What's up?
I want to welcome Almer Duck. Thanks for showing up. What's up?
I was sleeping until now.
I didn't mean to wake you up. You can go back to sleep. That's way more important than this shit.
No, it's 10 at night, so should be awake anyway.
Oh, what? Damn, man, you're busy. Okay, so let's keep moving. So what we're doing is we're getting through Harmony's articles, and then Almer Duck, we're gonna get to yours. So you can hang around, or you can nap for a little bit longer if you'd like.
No, I'll be around.
I
I can hear a voice double.
Let me see something here. Thanks for telling me. Let's see here.
Yeah, I hear almost voice double. I don't hear your voice double.
Okay, almost is doubled. How about now? Can you still hear?
Testing?
Yeah. Yay.
That's fixed?
It's fixed.
Yeah, that's fixed.
Cool. Hopefully that won't be played back. My bad if it is. All right, so let's finally get to the last one of Harmony's here. Which one is your? I think it's 6897.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, this one looks interesting.
It is interesting. I thought it was rather neat. So this one's like an evil media company, and apparently it's got a whole thing associated with it. I didn't realize. I thought it was a one shot, and then it has
yeah. Vikander Need Technical Media is Grigory Karpin's baby of a GOI.
Yeah, it appeals to me because I was like, oh, evil media company. I like that.
Yeah, it is very you for sure.
So it was an office in California. You can only enter if someone who's already inside lets you in, like Castle Ravenloft. Once you get inside, the world is all warped and weird, and there's some surprising breaks in clinical tone that I liked. And there's a series of logs from the evil corporation, which ends with a little bit of in-universe rainbow capitalism, which I was like, oh, nice.
Really?
Yeah, go down all the way to the bottom. There's a little bit of rainbow capitalism.
Yeah, I think I saw this on Twitter. I hate to say that. Let's see. Wow. Good long interview here. Oh, boom. There it is. There it is. Does that have placement in the article, or is it just kind of there?
I think there might have been something to proceed. I don't remember. I remember seeing that and being like,
hey.
I hope that's ironic.
I don't know.
Was it in June when they were doing the whatever, the addenda, whatever, does it date it in June in the immediately preceding addenda there?
Let's see.
Time, but is there a?
I don't know. Maybe I can look up the word June. It's not in this document. Interesting. Well, I do find it also interesting that the rating module is down at the bottom and the top. Okay, well,
I think it's required to be at the top. I don't think that there's a choice in that, which is the worst possible place for it. But obviously, that's where it has to be mandatory for everybody.
Well, so we've got some more department work here. We got the Department of Procurement and Liquidation. So
and also there's a character named Grimes in here, and every time I see this name Grimes, I immediately think of both the Grimer Pokemon and Chelsea Manning's girlfriend.
Oh, Grimer Pokemon, huh? Let's see, Grimer Pokey. Let's just take a little detour here. Why not? Yeah. Oh, look at that guy. Oh, wow, look at that one. Yeah, that's a Gen 1.
An awesome mental image.
Yeah, I remember that from all my many hours I spent playing Pokemon Blue version. I was like 5 years old.
Is, part of the original 100 Pokemon. Yeah.
It is 150 the world to see. To be a Pokemon master is my destiny. It's a great song. Do have the Poké burned into the deepest recesses of my brain.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, well, so this is a pretty long one. You'd say that it justified its length pretty well.
Actually, I thought that I liked the other one that was long better. I thought that the dialogue a little too cute. It was crunchy and Whedon-esque, and it like that can work, but the whole time it kind of gets, it's like watching the first Avengers movie 3 times in a row. Eventually, you just want to punch those smug cunts right in the face.
Yeah, the plicky dialogue, plinky kind of stuff. I mean, so basically, when I see Site 43, unfortunately it's almost synonymous with that to me. And I try to not bring that into an adjudication of an article, but that's just sort of its style. It really tries to like my way of putting it is that every character, not everyone, but most characters in the Site 43, which is its own big universe, they all tend to try to be like Star-Lord, like as much as possible. It's like every character is like full tilt Star-Lord.
That's basically what I wrote here. I felt it felt stock and kind of phoned in, but it's all very polished and slick. So it's like someone put the bare minimum of work to render these characters, but put a lot of work into the structure and a lot of work into putting it together to keep things moving along, keep them interesting, even if the characters and what they're saying aren't particularly how they're saying things is more interesting than what they're saying.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of polish with the visuals here. I mean, it's sort of got this campy sort of style to it with these.
That's probably what kept my attention reading the whole way through. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. So I mean, you gotta give it what it tries to do. I mean, for certain.
A lot of elbows into this one.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of agreement tonally with the campiness of the visuals and the campiness of the characters and things like that too. So it sounds like it's a well done Site 43. So if you're a fan of Site 43. Check this one out. If you're not a fan of Site 43, at least it tells you right up front what's going on. So maybe you don't want to read this one. What do you think, Harmony? Just recommend or no?
I recommend this one. I thought it was the parts that were good on the whole were better than the parts that I thought were not so good.
All right, cool. And it's got quite a good reception. I think this is about 47 plus 47 at this point. So looks like it was Grigori Karpin who wrote this, and of course Harry Blank is always just down the shelf from.
When we put those together, it's just going to be Upvote City. Just add DJ Cactus, and then it would have gone over 100.
Exactly. And that's another discussion for another time, I'm sure. But so this is a pretty popular way to write. I think Site 43 is so dangerously adjacent to Neo Law Foundation. It's just I usually don't get a good feeling when I see a Site 43 article. But having said that, there are really, really good ones out there. So and this one does get a recommendation from us. So go check it out.
Yeah, this one gets the mildest recommendation of the three that I recommended, though. I think that 6218 and the French one are definitely both way better than this.
Cool.
Because the 6218 is ambitious, and 101 FR is really ambitious. So ambition beats polish in my perspective.
It's also some depth to it. It sounds. I mean, just it's pretty easy to write, Marvel-esque plinky characterization and make it sort of goofy,
make it fun and poppy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do that, I would say. Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there any more articles that you have?
Nope, we just ran through all 6 of mine. So that is, I have 3 that I recommend, 3 that I said maybe give them a miss, and I hope that y'all listening found my analysis to be interesting.
Well, I certainly did, and once again, I can't thank you enough for taking on some of the load. So thank you so much.
Yeah, this was fun. Let's do it again.
All right. Well, I'll give you some more homework. I'll give you some more work to do for sure.
Play.
All right. Thanks. Okay, so we will move on. Harmony, you're more than welcome to stay. Obviously, if you got something to skedaddle, please don't feel obligated to stay.
I think I'm going to start getting ready for my Betty bye over here. But it's been lovely chatting with you, and I look forward to tuning in myself and listening to the back half of this program with my colleague and comrade Alma.
And that's a great segue. Thank you. Have a great one. Yeah, and so we will now turn to Almer Duck. So thank you once again for taking. I was telling Harmony, thank you so much for taking on some of this work. I mean, so it was just a wonderful time to get away with my family, and I would not have been able to focus on it were you not helpful in this coverage. So thank you.
So my turn.
Yeah. So just hit me up with an article. We'll go to it.
So the first one is 6362.
Okay, 6362. I should be seeing that here. Let me just do this. 6362. There it is, right in front of my face. Look at that. Okay. Well, let's pull this one up. Interesting already. Tell me about this and what you think of it.
So this one is a first article, and the anomaly is a group of people with unknown identity, usually adults, usually male, who when you are completely alone, show up to beat you up. And they only stop once they're observed, once you get killed. It's one of those articles that don't have a lot of focus on the anomaly itself, and a lot of the addenda is just dedicated to people's reactions to the anomaly. It's a tried and tested formula that works almost as well as you can write people, and I think here it just doesn't quite make the cut because I it's clear it's a first article. Let's just say that it has that sort of. I would describe it as this aura in the way people are written, because their reactions to what's going on feel a little bit out of the normal in a way that is hard to describe.
Interesting. So these addenda, is that where they're giving these character reactions here in these handwritten letters?
Yeah, they're all letters. They're all like notes or journals, which it's a point of convenience that I don't really like, because journals specifically, they're very difficult to write, and they are especially very difficult to write in a way that doesn't seem convenient, because they show up just in time for this person to write about the anomaly. They contain just enough to make it dramatic. They are in just the place for the foundation to find them. And
Yep.
people do not know how to write journals. People do not write like this in their own journals. Like,
Thank you for saying
you
that.
can just tell these people don't have their own personal journals.
So it seems as though the real engine of the article really seems a little contrived. Like you said, it's just very conveniently placed, all these handwritten notes, and so that kind of comes off as a lack of polish or lack of seamless machinery in the article itself.
Yeah, it might be me though, because I have just finished reading House of Leaves yesterday. So
Oh, wow, yeah.
most of the book is like journal notes from the experiences of the protagonist. So I might have my expectations like way off here.
Well, that might be.
It's the first article. I should not be so cynical. I'm being
Well,
overly cynical.
You got to welcome him in. It's almost like hazing, I guess. But no, I mean, hey, you should have high expectations for those things, and particularly the journals, because I think that if you let someone get away with having that contrived sort of literary device of just showing up whenever it's convenient, that's not a good way to write.
Yeah, this is the kind of article that it will benefit from a second look, like 1 or 2 years from now, when they learn all of the other specifics of the format.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'd say the anomaly caught my attention, just the idea. And then, of course, this image, it shows someone's feet dangling here with quite a mess. So it certainly does, I think, maybe pull the reader in a little more just with that. And like I said, the anomaly is pretty creative thing. And something else that I've noticed just looking at this is that there's an interesting bit of code here where you can show either the transcribed document or the original document. Which, of course, is a godsend, because this, for example, you would not be able to read at all. But this is interesting. It's not quite a collapsible. It's not quite a tab. So there's
That's a very bit of effort. That's very commendable.
Yeah, and then, of course, we all know, and I think it was Stormbreath who said this on Twitter recently, but we all know that it's impossible to render notebook paper convincingly in CSS on the wiki. So it looks like this individual who wrote this just went all out and basically photocopied an actual journal page. So kudos to the extra effort there.
Yeah, those details, like, they make the articles they're in. Like, it just gives you this sensation of genuine effort that's so hard to find. Because as people become better writers, they eliminate these like small wrinkles in their style, wrinkles of details, of extra effort. They just streamline the process, and you don't really notice this like consciously until you start looking for it. But it's very noticeable when you finish reading. You have this lingering sensation of this article has had a lot of effort into it, or this article is just like half-assed. Even if it isn't half-assed, it just feels kind of that way.
Yeah, it's definitely a vibe, almost like a tactile vibe. You get a flavor or something. Okay, so this has done pretty well for itself, I would say. What would you say? Recommend or no?
I would recommend it because it's a first article, and for a first article, it's very good. Especially, it deserves more criticism because it's gotten so little.
Yeah. Well, once again, shout out to T. Rutherford, who I've noticed is seemingly reading almost every article that's been coming out. Maybe not every one, but this is not an uncommon sight to see T. Rutherford show up these days and post a crit here. So I always like to nod to good crit that's posted. So T. Rutherford says, the core anomaly is compelling, terrifying, unexplained. The naked admittance of the Foundation that they have no idea how this happens or how to stop it really lends to the narrative. You build a good mystery with the conprogs, which is promising. We just talked about this, Harmony and I, about how building mystery is one of the main functions of the containment procedures, and it's a vital part of, I think, the genre.
Yeah, that's nice to see from a first article because I have never met a single author who does containment procedures well, like consistently, except for Dr. Clef, who uses them in a very strange kind of half description way, and nobody else like exploits that space in any consistent manner.
Pretty good. Well, Dr. Clef is one of the best, so that you heard it from Ulmerduck. If you want to study some conprogs, go check out those. Yeah. All right, good. So, T. Rutherford kind of had, a so-so take on this as well. So, but hey, just in the interest of, encouraging new authors and keeping sort of a track of where authors come from and where they go, we'll recommend this article for you. So thanks for checking that one out. All right, so let's head to the next one, unless you got anything else to say about that one.
No, I do not.
Cool. All right, where are we going next?
Next one is 444-KO.
Ah, Korean, huh? They've been on a tear. The Koreans, I think, have been outclassing other international branches on the whole. What do you think about this one?
The translation is fucking terrible, and it's very hard to read, but you can tell it's an interesting read if you can get past the terrible translation.
Yeah, that's always such a difficult thing. Maybe people don't, appreciate this much. And Ulmerduck, maybe you can speak to this, seeing as how you are bilingual at least. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised to hear you try or whatever. So there's multiple places that a translation article can go wrong. You can be given the best ingredients, then of course your translation can ruin it. If you're not fidelitous or tactful in your translation of, let's say, something as potentially polished given to you as clinical tone.
Yeah, clinical tone is one of the easiest things to translate, and I would still say that the act of translation has about as much like effort and creativity put into it as you would do with a regular writing, and it's half as rewarding. It's very difficult to do right because even in languages that are like part of a family of brothers like Spanish and English, you are eventually going to find that there's certain ways of writing certain things that you can't do in both languages. You have to like change the entire sentence and try to keep more or less the same implications. And there's like regionalisms that everyone in like Spain would understand immediately, and no one in the United States is going to, even if you translate it like with that in mind. It's what I'm saying.
There you go. Yeah, so a lot is lost in translation sometimes. So you think that this article's main flaw is that process of translation, you would say?
Yeah, it takes like 2 or 3 reads to like get the complete picture, and that's not good. Not at all.
No. Well, help us out here. So what is this about, and what did you take from it?
Yeah, so this preamble is because I do not really understand exactly what is happening. But the idea that I have is that there's these 5 corpses left in a single house. They all appear to have either died from murder or suicide. And in specific, particular attention is paid to the fifth, who has like been hanged in a shed. And all of these are affected by some kind of visual distortion that prevents one from really identifying them. And the fifth gets to the point where you cannot tell even if it's human. But looking at it gives you the complete certainty that one, it's human, and two, it's a suicide, it's not a murder.
Yeah, I'm
And
looking at it now. It looks like it takes up pretty much the rest of the article. I think these incident logs are part of the fifth. No. I'm sorry. There's a divider that separates them. But yeah, there's definitely more attention paid to the fifth than the others.
yeah, there's this like sort of mimetic or cognitive hazardous effect that makes people die around these places when they stop researching the potential culprit for everyone's deaths.
Huh.
But sometime in the article, they figure out it's a chain of murders, like someone killed someone else, then that someone else called someone into the house and got killed themselves,
Oh.
until number 5, who instead of calling someone else, hanged themselves.
Huh. Yeah, I'm looking. I see one line that's kind of talking about this, but I kind of see what you're talking about with the translation not being very good. This line says the agent that tried to untie the rope, which the SCP-5 was hung on, disappeared. not a great clinical tone statement there.
Yeah, I think like this cognitive hazardous thing follows from that attempt to untie the noose. That's what's implied, at least, but can't quite tell. It's never explicitly said. This like mimetic effect is never really explained directly.
All right.
And
Well,
there's a huge endnote that explains the rest of the anomaly and introduces a few elements that haven't been foreshadowed before, which is that the corpse that is hanging is somehow alive or in a half dead, half alive state. So they're still possessed by this like anomalous effect that makes them kill people. So under no circumstances must the noose be untied, because that releases them. They try to hang themselves to like stop them from murdering someone.
wow. Yeah. Well, it
Which
sounds.
sounds awesome, but
Yeah,
it's
it
so
did. It
obfuscated
is.
by several layers of mistranslation, and the article itself is kind of obtuse and it has the explanation at the end, and everything else is set up. So it's
Yeah.
difficult to tell how
Yeah.
well it's been executed.
I mean, as you're saying this, I'm totally wowed by this idea. I mean, it sounds so creative and very creepy, you know. But it just sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of maybe architectural intelligence when it came to putting this good idea to its best setting. It's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like. I think this is an example of a translation problem that is not possible to address, because this might make a lot more sense in the original language, because Korean is fairly distant to English. Even if a lot of Korean just gives up and becomes English, and it's
Yeah, you know, my wife is Korean, so I hear that all the time.
ah.
Yeah, just thrown in there.
Yeah, I think this like is a product of a different culture, a different kind of writing, and it's just going to fill off no matter how you do it, unless you like change the entire format to be more familiar to us. And if you do that, you just kind of ruin the point of the
Yeah.
article, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, there definitely maybe we could say this in a sense that it's it's admirable of the translator to attempt something like this, where it kind of seems like the treatment of translating it might ruin parts of the actual article. So there's something to be said for an ambitious attempt, but at the same time, I'm seeing things about this article that I think just don't do a good job just all around. Like, I mean, this last note here, this last line that's in all caps almost: "Do not untie the noose again. It stopped like it is now at first, but you untie it again," with all these eyes, sort of interrupted by something happening. It just seems like a pretty, I don't know. It doesn't work well for me. That ending.
Well, keep in mind, a lot of these branches, they don't have nearly as much time reading. So this kind of cheesy endings or like tropes that you notice immediately and they take you out of the story, uh, they don't notice that at all. It's like,
Huh.
it's not a problem to them.
Wow.
This happens in like every international branch, and it's a part of why they are not very popular. Like
Huh.
even after years and years of very good translations, the best international articles always have these little like, which seem like beginner flaws, although
Yeah.
they aren't
Yeah,
really flaws in handling
absolutely.
their plot.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and there's always the translation rust too. Something about it is just a little off. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that these other branches sort of take these leaps, a little more liberally than let's say EN does. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really difficult to describe where the priorities are because there's a lot of quality and a lot of criticism put into this, but it's just not focused in certain areas like tropes or cheesiness.
Hmm.
Maybe because the concept itself seems so cheesy, it's like inevitable that you'll arrive at some kind of
Yeah,
conclusion like that.
they just throw it on the pile, huh? Well, all right. Well, this one, it was a decent length. I don't think it's too long. Did you say you would recommend this one or no?
I would recommend it only as an interesting read. It's not a good read, it's an interesting read.
Well, there you
Only
go.
if you're like willing to look past the errors and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, it
Or if you
doesn't.
know Korean.
Yeah, there you go. I just read the original. It doesn't have a lot of discussion here. So once again, we appreciate you taking a look at it and telling us a little bit about that. So that's nice. At +9, I think it's probably, from what you say, probably fairly rated. Although of course there's always that international ceiling, that added international weight that prevents, I think, translations from doing as good as the native ones. Okay, so let's see, where are we going next?
Next one is 6317.
6317. There you are. All right, let's take a. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of red text here, a lot of strike throughs, relatively short, a little addendum at the end there. Okay, tell us about this one.
So this one is kind of strange, kind of poorly defined. It's an anomalous phone number which will
Mhm.
call you at random times and will ask you about some details about your family, especially your mother.
Huh.
And you're compelled to give it the data it wants, and next day it will start calling you and trying to manipulate you in negative ways. Um, which seems to get to your head in an abnormal manner. And the effects, exactly what it wants to do, what it does, it's kind of ill-defined, or maybe it is well-defined, but the way the article is written is very confusing. So
Hmm.
I didn't quite get that. And
Okay.
the meat is, of course, the collapsible, which
Okay.
is at least double the length of the article.
Oh, yep. There it
And
goes.
yeah, it has this SCP researcher who narrates their experience with it. And it appears that this anomaly coerces you into thinking it's some kind of friend, but it manipulates you into some pretty insane, deranged thoughts about what's going to happen to you, what's going to happen to your family. And it finishes up by telling you that you should kill your mother or father before the anomaly gets to them.
Huh.
And It's a pretty basic concept. Like, it's not super interesting at all. It's one of those articles that rely on a crack execution to work. Like, they need to stress on character and plot and how to expose information just the right way. And this one just bungles it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So sounds like a structural delivery problem, where it's maybe is a little too suspiciously sort of parsimonious when it's information and then gives it to you at the end. And it's supposed to be like a mic drop, but it just doesn't. It's kind of easy to see the whole time. Is that about right?
Yeah, there's a theme of manipulation, but this researcher Henderson doesn't sound at all like they have been manipulated. Like, they seem fairly certain of the sequence of events that led them to where they are now, which is that they are going to kill themselves because they just killed their own mother.
I see.
But they seem just certain that they have been manipulated, and people who have been manipulated are usually like not sure of how things unfolded. They just have a vague idea. They think they might be hallucinating, and they are certainly not as dramatic, and they don't speak for as long. Something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that when people have emotional breakdowns, they don't speak for long. They speak just what they need to, because speaking becomes a very tiring act. Like, physically, it's tiring to speak while you're crying, where you're in a very emotional state. And this person just rants and rants and rants and describes their situation. And for the degree of stuttering that they're going through, this is like torment.
Right. He. All over the place.
Yeah, it's well written, but it's missing so many key details that it feels like unnatural.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, because I hate to be pedantic like this, but if you're in the role of somebody working for the foundation who's transcribing, let's say, this Henderson person's messages, would you really include all of the impediments? Would you really include all the stutterings in there? Like, I don't know. I mean, I get that it's there for the emotional effect, but yeah, I kind of see what you're saying with it. Kind of, there's sort of an asymmetry with how someone would react in this situation, and it just not being realistic enough to what's present here.
Also, there's like that image that you're looking at that plays like no part of the article. Like, as far as I can tell, it has like no role whatsoever, but it's just there.
So it seems like its role is just to be an exclamation point.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it, but it has like no relationship to the article.
Not sure what it means either.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's like something. It's like something important distorted behind a lot of filters, but I have no way to know.
Well, if you click the actual image, it takes you to it on Flickr, so that's cool. Although it is all rights reserved, maybe it's the author. We'll find out.
That might be the author. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it is or not. Let's see who the author was.
Check the license box, like at the bottom.
Oh yeah. Thanks. Licensing box here. Yeah, it doesn't really talk about the image there. It just talks about the page. Huh. Okay. Well, maybe I guess
we'll get to it later.
Yeah. I guess we'll assume. I think that's probably one of the instances where the strictness of the policy is actually going to help this article. Because if you get rid of this image, I think that, like you said, I don't know how much it's actually doing here.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because that sort of thing just leaves you confused instead of serving as a punctuation for what you've experienced.
Yeah. And then, so once again, T. Rutherford is showing up and doing our job for us in the comments here. So thanks, T. Rutherford. But T says, first, there's a lot of word traffic here, and the flow is extremely halting, and gives examples here. Besides the technical issues, the core anomaly itself is a fairly typical compulsion/violence/suicide style SCP, which I wouldn't recommend to even a seasoned author. It doesn't nearly bring enough uniqueness to the concept to justify itself. The log feels like an unbelievable exposition dump with phrases like "but anyway," yada yada yada. So yeah, downvote from T. Rutherford.
I agree
So,
with them. Like,
yeah, it kind of sounds like what you were saying too.
yes, it's a perfect criticism.
Okay, so I would hazard a guess and say that you do not recommend this article.
I do not. It's not a good article. It needs like, I'd say like 3 or 4 or more rounds of criticism. But seeing how this person writes people in this situation, I'd say it needs like a few weeks of studying how stress works and how emotional breakdowns affect people. Watch a few movies. Maybe read House of Leaves because
There you go.
because it does stuff like this and it's very
Okay.
good at that.
Yeah. By the way, everybody talks about how good that book is. I should probably read it. I have not read that book, so.
You're going to read it and you're going to realize, oh, so that's where that came from, because a lot of the gimmicks you see in SCP come from House of Leaves, and
Oh, okay.
it's like the prima materia of internet fiction, I think.
God damn good word. Yeah. And then just one thing before we leave this article, this stuff always bothers me. It's minor. These things are totally fixable. But when you have something like this, if you look at this sentence, the second one, the one that starts off the second paragraph, and you interrupt the sentence with a parenthetical, which is in red, and then you put a period at the end of the parenthetical and another period immediately after what would be the punctuation to the non-parenthetical line.
Yeah, I hate that so much.
Yeah, the whole point of putting an entire sentence in a parenthetical to include a period at the end of it is to be its own sentence, just sort of whispered to the side. So that period should definitely go after the figure. This is small stuff, but it just
Also, please space your paragraphs. Space them more. I beg you, please.
Yeah,
like the perfect space is like 3 or 4 lines, maybe 5. Not as many.
I kind of cheated and looked a little ahead on some of your notes. I think we're going to get to another article that does this too.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get to that next, but let's just see what you got on your list next, and we'll get to it in time.
Awesome.
All right, what you got?
This one is 6802.
All right, 6802. Oh, this one I try not to pay attention to these too much, but I do notice when an article has like a lot of comments over here, and that's not necessarily an indication that it's good. Obviously, you could be ratioed. Could be a lot of people who are upset with you, with that comment thing. But it's always just an interesting little catch of the eye as we go into an article. So let's see what this is about.
It's one of those articles that rely like on you as a reader having the right expectations to subvert them. I despise the phrase subversion of expectations because it always prefaces like the flattest kind of twist you could have expected ever, and it just leaves you hanging. And
yeah, we're used to hearing that phrase, subverting expectations here. We hear it all the time.
So, to get to the actual point, 6802 is a dog that every sometime at a random times it will start asking for soup, which is why it's called Soup Dog, and it will compel you to help it find soup, and once it does, it will inhale it through the nose at very rapid speeds until it has consumed like 40 gallons, I think. Yeah, that's the number.
Wow.
Which is it's a pretty funny anomaly, but the twist is in the collapsible. That's the entire point of the article.
Let's check it out. Okay.
And as you can see, because it's a single sentence, it's supposed to be a twist.
Oh,
what
no.
the fuck is a twist? Because it says that's their favorite. That's like the dog's favorite soup.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yikes.
So you might be thinking, what the fuck is a twist? Where is it? So according to the discussion, the twist is supposed to be that seeing the collapsible at the end as such a short article, you're going to expect something bad to happen, but it just doesn't. It's just like nothing bad.
That's the subverted expectation, huh?
And this might be a better article, but it reminds me a lot of something else, which is 4465, which also relies on a meta twist on you. 4465 is a gun that was found in someone's corpse.
Oh, yeah, this one. Yeah.
The one that, despite shooting only once and to one person, kills like all of their family and their dog,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
there's
Yep.
like a collapsible for test logs, and once you click it, you find that testing has been suspended, and that's
Yep.
where the article ends.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this one when it came out. I think it was Dark Stuff that wrote. Yeah. Um, this was. Yeah, I remember this one very, very well. Very memorable because it actually twisted the article on one line, which is very impressive to do.
I personally despise this kind of article, and
Go
I'm
ahead.
not happy to see that there's more of them because what this kind of twisting does is that you're expecting something, you're expecting a kind of content, and the article subverts that expectation by giving you nothing, giving you fucking nothing.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
it's not that the article has offered new content, it's just that it subverted my expectations. It
Yeah.
gave me nothing new. It's just, it's a purely deconstructive, and it doesn't offer anything of its own except for like the strange concept of the soup dog, which is why I think this article is better than 4465, because the soup dog is a very good idea.
Mm. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying about that. I mean, so yeah, the end of this, I get that there's somewhat of a little bit of an effect that the reader is going to get when they click this and they say, "Oh, it's just a sentence or two." Um, but yeah, I mean, is this sort of like last line, one-liner sort of delivery, sort of the punchline, that last one-liner that to send off the article is, something that we've seen a lot of. There's a lot of authors who do this. Rounder House does this all the time, at least used to. I'm not sure about these
Yeah,
days.
I was thinking about one of their JamCon articles, which was like some kind of area where an explosion would increase the traffic speed in New York, I think, and there was a very long abridged test log, which implied that the Foundation was actively exploiting the anomaly to get faster to work,
Oh,
and
right, right. Yeah, I remember that one
the
too.
article ended with an admission by 052, I think, saying that, well, wouldn't you do that too if you had to go through New York traffic?
Yeah,
Something like that. It was way better. It was a way better ending.
yeah,
But there's only so many of these articles you can see, and so many meta twists you can get through because before it just like falls flat. Because
Hmm.
by themselves, single sentence twists are very flat.
Mhm.
They don't give you anything. They just twist what is already there, and that's typically not a very good ratio for an article, which you're reading to get something new, to get a new experience, to get new entertainment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I want to say I may be crazy here, but I do a lot of reading on the SCP Wiki, and I want to say this may be absolutely insane and completely incorrect, but I want to say that I've seen this before. I've seen this article before. It just has a very familiar vibe to it. I think I've seen this not do well the first time it was around. If that's the case, then kudos to the author.
Oh,
But
you've
yeah,
noticed that like this trend of old rejected articles like popping back up again?
that may be what we've seen here. Yeah, I've seen a few of those in the last month, I could say.
I've seen Senor Purple and Jake Lett's Hitler Dog, which is a very funny title. Um, just two old articles which were extremely short and posted like in 2019 originally, which later got deleted and reposted now, and now they have succeeded.
Well, there, way to go! My gosh, took some time to age. Um, yeah, I'll have to look back on that. Maybe I can figure that out. But and then another thing that I often see with articles of this type, and I would describe this from what you said. Obviously, I haven't read these. As really just a highly mimetic article. It's basically just skimming on the surface of impressions and trying to play off of. This kind of ties into what you were saying as well, but it kind of plays off of just the most superficiality when it comes to the composition and the read. And I think that this is not really a mistake when you see the comments in these sorts of articles that play this card, where basically every comment is just, it's almost NPC, it's almost algorithmically derivable, like sort of complementation. So we have like, yes, simple soup, good boy. Almost pseudo one-liners. Not obviously not these two comments.
I don't think that's NPC behavior. I think that's more of a this was posted in chat. This was like a chat meme for a while, and it got adapted into an article.
There you go.
Something among those lines.
Yeah.
You can just tell that it was like some kind of joke someone did, and someone made it an article because it was funny.
Exactly. I mean, we've had articles like that before, but I mean, it comes off as there's a very strong divide in the SCP Wiki now that's just completely unapologetic about it. Where if you are not in on the joke, then sorry. Like you have to be in on this joke, and there's really no bone thrown to anybody who isn't.
Yeah, I fucking hate that. It's like if you're not having fun, you're just cranky. You're no fun if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Instead of make a fucking good article for me to read, please.
Yeah, and once again, I kind of hate to say this too, but it looks as though this is one of the higher ones that have been rated this week, and so typically I think there's a very strong disconnect between the quality that's present and the rating, particularly for sort of lowest common denominator mimetic efforts like this. So, take the rating for what it is. It's really just an indication of popularity. It doesn't really have anything to say beyond that, I think. So maybe this is a good example of that. So it sounds like you might not recommend this article.
I would recommend it over 4465, but I would only recommend it if you like the concept. Like reading the concept without knowing what it is kind of entertaining, but it's not. I can't say it's not worth your time because it demands very little time. It's very short.
Yeah, but
it's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious what this is. It's just trying to be sort of pop writing. It's almost just the kind of writing that
it's a shit post. It's a meme.
Yeah,
You read it, you get done with it.
Whatever. Yeah, it's just it's so agreeable that it seems almost like plastic, almost like the talk show host with too much makeup and too perfect of a smile. All right, so next one. Let's go to the next one that you got.
So this one is my favorite from this week, which is 6753.
Here we go. Boom. Oh, nice and clean. Pretty short. All right. Tell us about this one. Neutralized.
The best way I can describe this article is as a world-building experiment. It's very dense with details, but the surface level concept is that this is a strain of lycanthropy, which is werewolves. And what's happened is that it's said that in this universe, the moon has shattered and disappeared. And as a result, every variant of werewolf is going extinct. Is going extinct because they cannot support themselves due to some fairly hand-wavy meta shit like the noosphere or pataphysic expectations, which I don't like, but it serves its purpose. It's there. And this particular species of werewolf produces a pheromone, which is antimemetic in nature, and it's used as a what's the name? As the precursor for an amnestic. So the Foundation is interested in making this species not extinct anymore because since the moon has shattered, they have all died. They only have like the separate organs or mummified corpses. And what they do, which is really interesting and clever, is that they start trying to find ways to work around this restriction that werewolves cannot exist in without a moon. So what they do is that first they try to move the project to another universe which still has its moon, or they try to make some kind of moon, which doesn't work either. They try to make artificial moonlight. They try to bathe them in mooncalf, which is bizarre, but you just realize it's smart. It's like, yeah, that's the reaction. It's interesting.
Yeah. So mooncalf refers to an abortive fetus, either of bovine or human nature.
you realize it's there because of the name,
Yeah.
the mythological association.
Very interesting.
Also, they try making a moon made of cheese, making like moon-shaped cheese to make this work, which is also a funny idea.
Huh.
They try making handling like artificial instances where they try to make the people that handle these artificial instances have the name Luna,
Mm,
Selene, Artemis, or
see.
Diana, which
See.
are all associated with the moon. These are like either
Huh.
moon, the name moon in Latin, or different mythological figures that are associated with the moon. These are like, I think there's the name of an archetype in mythology that's called Moon Huntress or something like that. I don't remember. And there's a very good ending, which is that they try to use trans werewolves, which is an interesting idea, which is people who do not have lycanthropy, but they try to as like part of their identity. I thought that was very interesting because like that's totally something that would happen in a world where werewolves were like
Oh, for sure.
commonplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
They trying to graft these like artificial organs to make pheromones into them and trying to see if that works, but the Department of Applied Divination vetoes that measure, which is an excellent one-liner. That's an excellent line. Like the Department of Divination vetoed this. Like, oh shit, that's a great ending.
Yeah, this whole thing has been keeping my attention this whole time.
And I have wondered for a long time already about this article. It's one of those that have a lot of detail put into them. They are very dense, very packed with world building. That's what he says. So world building experiment, and it kind of calls back to a lot of these. I think series 3 articles, which had like some kind of very simple technological anomaly that they take to a realistic extent, like ghost lights.
I can't say I do.
There's a few of these articles which are very short. They are about some kind of technology. One of them is ghost lights, which is about the factory using small ghosts as a way to save up energy on light bulbs. And because of the way these lamps are done, they break over time and they start haunting houses. Another one of those is the Prometheus car time loop, which is that Prometheus Lab sets a time loop that to have the car, their like future car in the present time, which allows them to get more profits until they can't, so they have to bankrupt themselves to solve the paradox.
Wow.
And another one of them is about a robot who reads like animal intestines to predict the stock market. It's like automated aruspicy, I think that's the name.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty good.
And that kind of article has gone extinct for like years.
Wow.
So seeing one of these, which it's great.
That's crazy.
Because instead of going for a long narrative, it packs so many details into one like small package. It feels like reading the Wikipedia overview for something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know that feel, like that very interesting feel that some kind of Wikipedia summary leaves you with?
Mm-hmm.
It has
like
that thematic to it.
Yeah. This seems to me like you're describing this in a really appealing way, because not only was this an interesting, I mean, it's if you just want to get down on any level of granularity you want to look at this thing on, it's just very clever and highly intelligent, and just from what I'm seeing. So, for example, like the idea of, can werewolf, what would happen if you took the moon away from a werewolf? That right there is pretty creative to me. And then this sort of plays with like tropes and the old shibboleths that are common to this site, which is like, does the black moon howl? Like, it's kind of dancing with that question a little bit, and just all the clever things, the clever directions that it goes into here, from just the basic, relatively simple ingredients that it starts with. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Just like it's very, very dense with a lot of just real focused creative thought.
Yeah, that said, you won't like this article if you're expecting like a narrative or a clever twist or something like that. You will read this article and come liking it if you like the world building gimmick where you like name drop something that's normal in this universe, but it's like very strange for our standards and treated as normal. If you like that kind of world building, you're going to like this a lot. I personally really like it because I can appreciate how clever it is. But if you don't think it has value for being clever, which is fair, like no amount of cleverness will make a good article if it's just badly written.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah, I'm
don't,
looking.
if you don't appreciate the cleverness, you're not going to like it.
Yeah, and I'm reading a comment from someone who didn't. They said, interesting world building. I started to feel the immersion in the casual clinical description of the werewolf super species. However, there's a bit too much sci-fi jargon, which I can understand. I see that. And open-endedness here to really get my attention. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, certainly this is not going to be for everybody. But once again, it's short. I think it's not really too commitmental of a read. So I'm feeling a very strong recommendation from you on this one.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, cool. All right, well, good deal. All right, what's next?
This is our last one for today, which is 6937.
6937. Here she be. Okay, let's take a peek. Okay, now this is the one that I referenced a little earlier. That I kind of cheated. I kind of peeked at your notes just a little bit. So I'm excited to hear you say them. So what is this one about?
I have very mixed feelings on this one because it's when you first read it, you don't quite realize what it is, but when you read it again, you realize it's a fortune-telling article. It knows how you will die. It knows your future. It's very smug about it because it knows your future and it's going to play with you. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on about how it can tell the future. You have
Yeah.
these gigantic test logs and gigantic like story segments, which are written entirely in clinical tone, which go exactly in the ways you would expect.
Hmm.
The Foundation finds this, they contain it, they realize its properties, they test them, they try to see if they can circumvent this future telling, and they can't. And all of this you already know by the description, but the next like 3,000 words is
Oof.
spent to establish this anyway.
Oof. Not good. Yeah, I can already detect a little bit of. It's almost like we can use the article's own words against it. Where this last testing log, the conclusion starts off by saying, "Once again."
Yeah.
Okay.
Like all of the, you already know by the end of the description that exactly what this does. It's like
Hmm.
a weaving machine that when you approach it, it like makes you part of this kind of hive mind in which you can read the future.
Huh.
It allows you to see the future as it's coming and predict it. And that's it. You can see the future. The Foundation knows it can see the future. That's
Hmm.
it. But something that I think has a lot of appeal for the article is how detailed it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because despite being kind of boring, the scientific accuracy and the detail it has is it's very in depth, which is very surprising for what I think is another first article.
Huh. That's impressive. Yeah, we got 22 footnotes here, which once again is not always an indication of over complexity, not always an indication of length. But hey, take it for what it is as a heuristic. There's 22 of them, and they all seem pretty dense.
Yeah,
Um,
the only I think what I would say interesting parts to read are the ending incident and interview with the anomaly, uh, which are still kind of confusing because the
hmm.
ending incident has someone trying to destroy it. They try to like cut off one of its parts to see if it can continue to predict the future that way. And what it does, it kills almost everyone involved in the test, and the survivor is taken to what I think is some kind of an alternate reality or the alternate timeline where shit is just going wrong. Like entire galaxies are disappearing. There's containment breaches. Everything is going wrong. And then it takes this researcher back to mainland reality and say, "This is what happens." You can see the line there, which I despise that because it's smug. It's smug as fuck. You just can't tell. Like this is supposed to be some kind of Marvel one-liner.
Yeah.
And then the last interview is just a lot of narration describing, which can be kind of interesting, which explains why they can see the future, why they are so smug, but it's at the end of the day, it's just a future-telling anomaly that knows how you will die.
Yeah.
And it's not even like particularly interesting ways, at least not most of them. It knows how you will die, it's smug about it. That's it. It has test logs that go on for like 1,000,000 words, and it just repeats itself.
Yeah, and it looks as though even the very last line, of course, this is also foreshadowed in the article. It basically tells the individual that they're going to kill themselves with a gun in 23 hours, and here it is right here. And then, at the end, it's basically just that exact thing played out, again.
Yeah,
so
it's an interesting read, but if you can't get through it, you're not going to get through it. It's dense as fuck.
It is dense.
I wouldn't say it's like worth your time because if you've been around for a while, you have seen like a million future-telling anomalies that know how you will die.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we just looked at one last week, 2 weeks ago, actually.
And every time it's the same fucking thing. It's it introduces itself as future reading. It knows how you'll die. Then you have test logs for exactly how you will die, and the Foundation try to like skirt around it, see how they can make something strange happen.
Right.
Then you might have like a final interview or experiment where they realize that it shouldn't do that. It's always the same thing. The only interesting point this one has is like density and a lot of detail and a lot of scientific accuracy.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, so I saw a lot of interesting terms here, just kind of skimming the surface of this. Klaxons was used. There's a lot of sort of this thing is taking place in Estonia, so there's a lot of sort of Estonian names and diacriticals and things like that in the actual words. So
something that I found interesting is that it uses an already existing SCP, but it black boxes it and explains it in the footnote. It uses like I think it's 093, the Red Sea object. It uses a Red Sea object, but it doesn't tell you it's the Red Sea object.
Interesting.
It just black boxes the name, then the number, and explains it in the footnotes.
Maybe it's a little Easter egg there for the author to enjoy, and anybody else like you who picks it up.
It's definitely full of stuff like that, which is very, very creative, but not like it doesn't make the article.
Yeah, I think the just giving it what I can just by looking at it in this brief moment. I think the image is pretty interesting. Of course, the black and white sort of makes it a little obscure. You've got this spindle-like, it's almost arachnid in its shape, and certainly looks a little bit ominous with this person sitting here at this device that almost looks like a marionette, with these strings going up and everything. So are they strings? Are they sharp points? I think I would say that the tone of this image is pretty appealing, I think.
It's very appealing, but don't look at it too closely because you're going to realize it's a painting. It's not an image.
Bummer. Let's see if we can catch somebody in the licensing team while we're at it.
It's surprisingly it's CC. If you look at the license box.
Look at that. Wow. All right. Yeah. Kenneth Hertz. Okay.
That's surprising.
Yeah. Me too. I would not have thought that. Okay, so this seems like the rating 10 might be pretty fair in your opinion. just a lot to get through. It looks like just quite a commitment. So if you have the time, it sounds like you're saying, maybe give this a read. And if you can't make it through, if you don't got the endurance for this sort of just sheer density, maybe it'll make itself known to you at some point in the read.
Yeah, if tiny details don't make your reading experience, don't read it, because you're not going to like it.
Well, all right. Well, interesting. Okay. Well, I think you said that was your last one. Is that correct?
Correct. That's my last one.
Okay. Let's see what others are saying about it. So this is long and dense. Has a couple of old Foundation cliches, like the redaction of random people's last names. Put exhaustive effort into researching this and synthesizing it into an enjoyable story. The image is sick as hell. Iffy on the flowery language at some parts. Okay, so yeah, people who have something to say about this generally like it as well. So, all right, well that's that. If you got the time.
Also, sorry, it's a first article, which makes it very impressive.
That is
because,
impressive.
It's very long. It's very detailed. It
Yeah.
has a lot of promise for the author, I think, because you can just tell in the way this is written. This takes inspiration from a lot of the greats from way back. And it's very surprisingly competent for a first article.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression that the person was working on this for a very, very long time.
It does. It absolutely does.
And then
it's like that density of detail that only long time works can have.
Yeah, and you got some interesting inclusions here. Like I'm reading this footnote 11 just because it's on my screen. But spider weaver deities, the spider grandmother. So yeah, it definitely plays on this arachnid image right here, doesn't it?
Yeah. Part of the plot of the article is that there's a dimensional web around this concept called the void, which continuously gets built by an entity called the spider, which is part of the web. And this weaving machine is like an instance, a part of the web, which is some kind of hive mind, which they can all see the future as it's coming. And the only thing they can do with what they know is torture others. And they derive pleasure from torturing others and telling them what the future holds for them.
Jesus.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more interesting when you explain it like that, but it takes a lot to get through to get to those interesting parts, and they're not worth the thousands of words of text.
Well, hey, that's once again such a service. Hopefully, that's what we do on the show is kind of pull out the good parts for you and give you an idea as to whether or not you want to commit your time to something like this. So, once again, excellent work, and thank you. I cannot thank you enough for helping me do this week. I got to spend some good time with my family, so thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed.
I did. We'll have you on again as soon as you'd like. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, and so we're about halfway through the show now, so we'll take a quick break, and as we typically do, a little intermission. And so I will be back in probably about 10 minutes. And Alma, if you need to take off, obviously, don't feel obligated to stay. And thank you so much once again.
Yeah, I will be going now. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll check you later.
See ya.
All right, everybody else, I'll see you back here maybe in 10 minutes or so. And I'm gonna get something to drink. See you then. Okay, I am back. Thank you very, very much for hanging out. And we are going to enter the second half of this show. And so, what we're doing here, by the way, is last week, so not this past Thursday to Thursday, but the previous one was somewhat interrupted by the WikiDot system going down completely. Of course, that was partially interruptive to this week, too. And thank God for Harmony and Almerduck, both of them coming by, because as you can see, there was just an absolute deluge of articles posted, particularly on the 25th of May, which is when obviously they came back up. And so we've had a little more posts than usual these last few days. Of course, people have been storing and holding on to their stores of SCPs and just chomping at the bit to release those. So they came late, they came delayed, but they came. So I certainly appreciate their help. And so we have about, I would say, maybe 10 articles that we did not cover. We didn't cover these last week because we couldn't visualize them. And the visualization of these articles, I think, is so necessary to walking through them together and to showing the things that we're trying to bring out. So instead of attempting to go through some of those blindly, just waited until this week and was hoping that we'd have about half a show worth of articles to get through the first half. So it's worked out pretty well. So let's go back. We'll take these. Of course, last week we did a good number, maybe 5 of the ones from the previous week. It was rather a slow week, all in all, relatively. So we'll pick up kind of with these older ones from about 2 weeks ago. So the first one is SCP 6978. Let me pull that up. So here we go. SCP 6978. So what is this? Okay, this obviously an interesting looking article, very clean. This is a neutralized metaphysical anomaly that infinitizes quantifiable metrics into an indescribable mathematical concept. So if that sounds like it's way too much thrown at you at once to get and to appreciate, then you kind of get the gist of the article. It really is a very, very highly conceptual mathematical nature to this article. It is satisfyingly intelligent. I think it probably is too smart just in what it's trying to do with the anomaly itself. So taking something that takes any number, anything you can set a number to, and then blasting it into infinity and beyond, really, is not an easy concept to track initially, just right out of the gate. And so neither, I think, are some of the things that the action that's happening in this article, such as bringing in alternate dimensions and kind of playing with how those are relating to the base dimension that we assume is our own in this article. So I think the stark black and white CSS with this really looks good. We've got these sort of pale blue divs going on in here. I think that's a really nice look to this. When I read this, there were a couple of slight grammatical errors. So if we do SCP-003 appear to be neutralized, I think that's supposed to be appears. This could be a plural. I'm not too sure about 33, but it does say entity, so I'm not sure. That seemed like an error to me. There is certainly a sparsity to this article, sort of a beckoning empty space, but the anomaly described here is, in my opinion, too intentionally vague to come across strong enough. With all the conceptual emptiness, we're left looking in the negative spaces for any recognizable shapes, and they just don't help us out when forming things. It seems as though there's just, once again, a very sheer, very apparent intelligence to this, but I don't think it does enough to sort of meet the average reader halfway to get us to where it is living. The testing logs here that you see, these are the ones in blue, they seem to adhere to an internal logic, but it's not really consistent or displayed enough to draw anything from this, I think, but sort of ill-equipped guesses as to what might be happening. There's a lot going on in this article in the pans, in the right and the left, but not a lot going on in the center. And so I think that while it's apparent there's something here, there's a something shaped hole in this article. I think it's It's grippable, but it's just a little too slippery and it falls out of the hands a little too easily for me to really be impacted by this article. So, having said that, doing very abstract articles is hard and it's very amazing when done well. But there has to be this absolute sweet spot of form and the suggestion of form. And I think this just barely gets the mix, I think, a little too wrong. And if you get this sort of mix a little too wrong, you might as well have not gotten it right. So, there's not enough, I think, adding to this article than just a basic mechanism of, once again, it's sort of turning into an infinity any number that you can have. And I also don't agree with all of this testing that goes on here. Once again, it's really a basic mechanism that sort of just infinitizes everything, universalizes some number dramatically. And so it just seems at some point the Foundation would know better than to keep testing this, because by testing it continuously, they sort of create more of a problem for themselves in this article than they would have. And so there's this end. It's sort of, if you follow the thread of the concept, has a nice sort of satisfying punch, a nice escalation to the end of it. But I just don't think there's quite enough there to really follow that without maybe a couple of reads. So I'll be quite honest, I haven't understood jack shit. A couple people in here didn't like it. There was a little funny moment in there too, so that's cool. But I think it sits at about 30, for after a couple of weeks, and so I think that's pretty fair. One second. It's hot in here. Turn on my fan. Okay, so that's it. 6978. I would recommend you read this. It's not really that long. It, once again, looks great. Nice on the eyes. And maybe you'll follow it through conceptually the first time. If you find yourself not understanding what the hell is going on in this article, don't worry about it. It's not just you. Okay. So moving on, we will go to SCP. This one's way back here. Is it? Did it get deleted? I'm going to have to search for it now. SCP ES234. ES234. There it is. It was right in front of my fucking face. So what happens when you do streams like this? Suddenly, okay, this one. Yeah, this one. Okay, I remember this one. So basically, as the picture indicates, pretty clearly, you got to give it to the picture. It definitely sort of gives the article an aphoristic image right here. It's a cat wearing a detective top hat, basically. So this is a sapient cat that is obsessed with solving crimes. That's what this article is about. So immediately the cat shows itself. It's right there. And once again, it's been a few weeks, but when this was released, it's still somewhat on the tail of SCP PL-COT-J and just the deluge of cat articles that we've gotten recently on the wiki. So, it has to operate in that context. I hate to say that, but it does. And so I think there's really a cap. There's really a limit to the appeal right off the bat, which is a shame because once again, PL-COT-J, the worst thing it did was occupy a space that other articles should have because they could do it better. And this is one of those articles that could have done it better. So the containment procedures introduced, very uninspired devices. Again, we have a conditioned reward/punish sort of approach to the extras in this containment space that they're giving the anomaly based on good behavior or not, something like that. There's even the cliche of site-wide roaming privileges, which can be done well, but I think it needs to have a good reason for being there. And this one, I don't know if it actually does that, to be honest with you. The description, I think, makes this a little worse, with the anomaly now capable of speech, almost guaranteeing us an interview or a transcription log somewhere that's going to feature an potentially unengaging, overbaked, immaturely cast character with just zany dialogue as a stand-in for the actual characterization. It's clear by the end, I think, of the first paragraph of the description here that this cat is the trope of a mid-20th century film noir detective with a raincoat and that dark hat that we see in the image in place even. So this cat can enact what are called noir events, which of course is a shout out to film noir, where everything in a given radius suddenly takes the visual aesthetic of such a film, of one of those film noir sort of productions. For example, these things being in black and white. And so, like the immediately preceding article that also did this sort of thing, where we saw an anthropomorphized animal get sort of like, human treatment and stuff like that. We get this entity that breaks English and misspells things for the sake of being cute. And of course, that article that I was referencing is that one about that spherical ball that lights up on fire and that speaks in broken English as well. So we get this sort of same broken English, misspelling things for a slight comedic flavoring. Maybe it's because I just suffered through a lot of relatively unsuccessful examples of this, but this doesn't work for me. The inclusion of numerous effortless containment breaches that we see at the end of the article is pretty low-key funny. I think anyone with a cat who has ever tried to contain the cat will know kind of the frustration of it always escaping. So that's kind of funny. But it does also make the Foundation seem pretty inept. So, for example, they create kind of a Truman Show scenario for this cat in order to placate the detective investigatory sort of urges of the cat, satiating its strong desire to solve crimes, and that's sort of the containment solution that they get into. But once again, this character I think is a little more engaging than expected, and it mixes some clear elements of Sherlock Holmes treatment, sort of deductive reasoning, being able to deduce with astounding confidence and accuracy things based on very obtuse observations. But I think ultimately the character, which is the central part of this article, is a little hard to get invested into. Pulls out a cigarette, lighting it with a golden lighter. Just these. All the tropes are here, and then you have problems like this period, and then a footnote 9, and then another period, right there. And then really honestly, the footnote placement is always something I kind of nitpick and look at. The footnote placement is all over the place. So you see, like, for example, this footnote 8 is after the period, which is my preferred way of doing it. Obviously, there's no right way of doing that. That's just what I think. And then in this situation, it's before the punctuation, the comma right here. Then, of course, 5, it's after the punctuation, and then 4, it's before the punctuation. So it's just all over the place. I don't fault anyone for doing it one way or the other, although I have a preference. It's when you mix the two. It's when it just tells me that you're not being very aware. You're not being very attentive to your own formatting, your own writings. Those sort of things bother me. There was at least one place that had some errant italics, but it looks like they fixed that, so that's nice to see. But yeah, so the whole article sustains this slightly off sort of humor intended note with things like the insults being censored at the end. Right here, you can see it. The cat's abilities are played with some good anxiety regarding the capacity and scope of it enacting this noir events, throwing in a slightly pataphysical angle to it. And then the end of the narrative is that the cat ends up being offered sort of a position in the deduction and containment of other anomalies as a form of pseudo-containment. So we might see this as Thaumiel, but we don't. It's Euclid, just given, I guess, how difficult it is to contain. The mood of the article, I think, is the nicest part of it. It brings some enjoyable feelings of those old black and white sort of Humphrey Bogart type films. In fact, we have explicit shout outs to that in something like the Maltese Falcon Protocol here. I think the characterization of the cat, given what it is and given what it's trying to do, is something that I'm not a big fan of. But I think for what it's trying to do, it's pretty well done. There's this line between effective and sort of nauseatingly trite that it sort of skirts, and that's a thin line, but I think it does a pretty good job of doing that. The clinical tone of the translation is great, so good job to the author and the translator for that. And I think it does enough to set itself apart in a grab bag of very, very similar articles and ideas, but it's certainly nothing very impressive at the same time. once again, the end result is sort of a dampened reception of just basically this one cat caricature trope sort of idea played out pretty well. But how far can it get, really, with its ingredients? I'm not sure. So, do I recommend a read? Yeah, I do. I do. I think it's clever. I don't think it does enough to upset itself too much. And I think it does a pretty good job of what it is trying to do, given the ingredients. I think the rating of 15 is probably too low. I would have liked to see this article by this point have gotten, at least double that, I think, just for the sophistication of what this article provides. So, but definitely go read it. It's not too long, and chances are I think you'll probably enjoy it. I certainly think it deserves more attention than it has. It only has one comment, which of course is the author, and no real commentary on it, when it deserves way more. Certainly more than what I just gave you. I think this is a pretty good article, so you can go check that out if you want. Okay, the next one, SCP 082IT. I'm not sure what the proper format is for this. You see the international branch sort of in between the SCP and the designation number, and then other times you see the INT branch at the end as a sort of suffix. Okay, so right off the bat, we will honor the content warnings for our sensitive viewers. This work contains an image whose content may result disturbing for some people. So we already have some broken English here. The image is hidden behind an intradiegetic content warning so that each reader is given the choice to not see it. Well, I do appreciate that. That's a nice gesture. So anyway, what is this article about? I'll let you look at the image here real quick. Okay, so this is an ancient battle helmet that enters an active state when worn. We already talked about the trigger warnings. It talks about an image that is padded with another content warning. So obviously I'm interested in this. I don't get triggered very, very often or really at all. So for me, that's something of an appeal. So I'll see what that is. The image of the ancient helmet sets the tone of the article pretty well. Sort of Bronze Age sort of, coloring here. So the anomaly, though, is pretty much straight Series 1. With anyone who wears this helmet gaining what are essentially video game statistic boosts. Each of these is separated into phases. We kind of just saw this basically with like that bobo tea, sort of milk tea sort of anomalous thing. So it kind of separates these into different effects with different phases: a maniacal phase, a performative phase, a wise phase, and each of these things are going to boost different stats basically. It throws in a compulsion effect by odd EEG readings, indicating that this basically takes over the cognition of the wearer. So really, ultimately, after we've looked at the anomaly and its description, we can safely say that this is essentially a Mary Sue maker. It essentially makes a Mary Sue out of someone, but one that also makes someone go crazy until dead. So we're working with some very unfortunate ingredients here. I don't think a lot can be made of this. And that's really, I think, what is the ultimate statement of this article. If you're a fan of Series 1 and you're nostalgic for that sort of thing, and you want to see a modern day one that has somewhat fallen through the cracks, I think, of what otherwise would catch attempts like this might be an article for you. It might scratch that itch. It does have some finesse. This shows up in the last sort of the credentials protected addendum here. It takes the very drab elements of a Series 1 and propels them into the end, into a real sort of 180 what the fuck kind of thing. It casts some dissonance between doing what is right for humanity in the name of scientific understanding, and we get sort of the casting of sort of an ethics committee and ethics concerns. And so the way it does this, I think, is pretty novel. So it's not that this article doesn't have anything worthwhile to it. I think if you get through to the end, I think it does have some rewarding things. It's just a matter of if you're going to want to get through to the end, given really the flavors that you're presented, at the outset and then all throughout here as well. And so we'll get to the disturbing image. I guess I won't look at this with you, but it's towards the end. Here it is. It's sort of in one of these like, gallery image sort of CSS treatments, giving you the option. Warning, the following image may result disturbing, so that broken English is not corrected there. Proceed with utmost caution, which is a strange way to put that too. But basically, I'll just describe this for you since that's my job. The disturbing image is one of a partially formed but stillborn fetus that looks rather alien. So I think it's pretty poor taste and some cheap shock value on the part of the authors. I do believe this would be better without the actual image, both in functionality and also when it comes to having to place these content warnings and this extra padding, just for the psychological comfort of the readers. I think you probably should just do without it, because you do describe the thing right here. So let's just have the image be mental and let the author paint that for the reader. So aside from that, I don't really think this article is worth a read. I think the rating of 12 is probably good to generous for this. And honestly, I don't know if this should really be here, but it is. So if Series 1 stuff with a little bit of more modern ethical twists to it, and some really gross imagery is your thing, then maybe this one is for you. Maybe go check that one out. Okay, moving on. Next one is 6604. Now this article is sort of on the fence for me. It runs with caricatures, sort of prepackaged characters. In this case, Al Capone. When really, if you know anything about Al Capone, he's really been Hollywoodized. This is not surprising, to the point of being bigger than he actually was. No one who is working with Al Capone really saw him as what people see him now. So there's sort of that inauthenticity to this, I think, but that's not really the fault of the author. And so I try not to read that into it. But just getting into it, this is a collection, a wardrobe of accessory items that when gathered together assume the form of an invisible Al Capone that can speak and all this stuff. The article casts a nice mutualism between the Prohibition era SCP, when of course you weren't supposed to be drinking, and Al Capone. And it finds basically a nice way to have the Foundation interact with this Al Capone variant in a way that's believable and politically likely and like I said, mutualistic between the two. So the anomalous items that are mentioned here that really take up the meat of the description, they're being ones that Al Capone in this mutualistic relationship found for the Foundation but kept for himself without turning them in. And this is termed very cleverly and enjoyably in the article as anomaly smuggling. So I thought that was pretty cool. The retcons of Al Capone, his notorious capture, is in this article the Foundation's doing. So that may play a sour note for you, but I think is relatively well done when it comes to retcons and characters. We get a new department, of course, the Department of, I think it's Concealment, the Foundation Concealment Department, I think is in here. There's also the Department of Whitewash. There it is. Foundation Concealment Department of Whitewash. So we're getting a lot of these sort of like informational sanitization departments coming out on the wiki these last few weeks. I'm not too sure about this one. I think it's kind of a mouthful, and also I think the inclusion of the term whitewash is just a little odd. There's also some questionable tone decisions. There's this one. Capone ordered a metal bat from an accompanying accomplice. And of course, you have the same word basically showing up twice, the same prefix, acom. It just, the flow doesn't work well. These are essentially cognates of one another, so it just doesn't work. It just feels like lazy writing or someone not paying attention. Resulting in an immediate hemorrhage stroke is kind of an odd way to put that, but once again, medical stuff is sort of infamous for being difficult. And you wouldn't really know that unless you're a medical professional. So I'll give you that. It's just a hemorrhagic stroke. A hemorrhage stroke is nothing that you'll hear ever. But once again, that's not really this kind of pea shooting at this article. Plinking, if you will. Not really important. Very fancy on the CSS collapsibles. You see that when you hover over them, not only does it change to the SCP Foundation sort of maroon color, but it's got this extra tag on the side that says view. Is it necessary? Probably not. Is it new? Is it novel? Yeah. So if you're a fan of these sorts of inclusions and flavorings, you got that to look forward to. I'm sure that we'll see this mimicked. This may not be the first time this has been shown on the wiki, but it's certainly not the last, I think. So the aesthetics of the interview are also interesting, something that we saw again in one of the articles that Almerduk was talking about, where the action, instead of being italicized or in parentheses, is instead given this sort of light gray touch to it. So that's just a little unique. I just noticed things like that, and I do appreciate people when they do stuff like this. The interviews themselves, I think, are the real highlight of the article. They're very snappy. They have a nice criminal wit, and Capone here is presented as interesting and charismatic, maybe a bit aggressively so. But the intelligence in the scenario painting here is high. There's a lot of architectural intelligence that's going into these interviews, particularly with respect to the characterization and the placement of good motives, good dialogue, clear characterization, all with a very pointed shape that points towards the end. The second addendum here features some very sharp CCTV footage layout, very clean, very organized, I think. And then the next transcript has really all the groomed suaveness of a real detective scene. So this is sort of the CCTV stuff here. I think this is just really well organized. It looks fantastic and is very simple without trying too hard. And then this next interview really is where we have a very authentic, organic feeling to this sort of detective work kind of setting and characterization to this. So I think the author knows how to write really engaging dialogue that feels organic, that doesn't really waste any time. It really doesn't have any time for all that funny business that we see a lot of on the wiki these days. So I think the ending is a bit anticlimactic. I'm not sure what it leaves and what the reader is left with. Maybe a bit of a, I guess that's expected sort of thing, but I feel as though the very inertia heavy story that we've been given through, particularly the things like these interviews, and sort of the aerodynamic characterization of people like this, like this Capone instantiation here, was going to point to something a little more satisfying. So, like I said, the article points exactly where it wants to go, but just that actual moment when you're there, I think, is a little bit of a letdown. But it's a fantastic read that shines through with very believable characters, very genuine dialogue, and it's just very, very satisfyingly intelligent. So I definitely recommend this article. I think that they do Capone, the myth, the legend, pretty well justice here. So good job with that. Okay, the next one on our list is 6564. Oops, that's 5. Type that in right. 6564. Whoa. 6564. I know this article is here. 65. Did I write it down wrong? 64. Let's try this. That's the problem if I don't. Oh man, there's 11 of these. Shit. 6764. Let's just try this. Sorry about this, gang. That's not it. That's Jay Dune's damn Ghost Girl article that I don't want to read again. Is it this one? Fuck me. Well, I am real ashamed here. 6564. That's not right. 65. Let's just do ones that start with 65. Here I am struggling. Is it 6559? Please be this one. No, it's not that one. We did that one last time too. Okay. Well, there's one in here that I'm obviously missing. And I hate that I did that. It must be this one. Yeah. It's got to be this one. No, it's not that one. Fuck me. Well, shit. They could have deleted it. I'm not really sure. We'll come back to that one. I'll have to try to find that one. I'm so sorry. It's an article about a phenomenon that alters the behavior of individuals at home that includes the sudden loss of hearing followed by a complete disappearing. Let me just do this real quick. I'm so sorry that I'm gonna have to do this. I know it's not that one. It's probably not that one because we just did that. And I don't think it was released on that final day. So I just don't want to let this article go. I mean, if the author deleted it, then that's one thing, but I'm not going to leave an article behind. No. That's the one we just did. Maybe it was deleted. I remember that one. Yeah, I guess it was deleted. I guess it was deleted. Double check these two just in case. I don't think it was released on the 18th. Well, that's a shame. I thought the article was pretty good. It definitely wasn't these. So, okay, well, I suppose the article was deleted. I'm going to do one more thing just in case. So I don't maybe leave it behind. 6564. Yep, looks like it was deleted. Okay. Well, that explains that. Not as much of a dope as I thought. I really thought it was short and poignant. I thought it was a really good article. I didn't think it was stellar or incredible, but I thought it presented some very interesting things. That's a real shame. I hate to see that. I do wonder why that author did that. All right, so let's get back to it. This is the next one. This is a cockroach anomaly that happens whenever one in a site is killed or crushed. This is SCP-6496. I think the best thing going for this article is that there's a solid mechanism to it, which lends itself well to testing logs. You know, those sorts of anomalies that sort of just beg to have testing logs. This is one of those. And so it does give us those with an experiment log here as an addenda. The anomaly itself is nothing fancy. Like I said, it's basically when you crush a cockroach in this one particular Foundation site, 47, more appear, almost like it's angry at you for doing that. So it's nothing fancy, but it does work, I think, well enough to be kind of gross and certainly well enough, I think, for an article. Anything to do with bugs, personally, is just automatically gross enough for an SCP article, in my opinion, especially when you throw in that disgustingly haptic act of crushing bugs. I hate that. I avoid crushing bugs. It's not for any, like, ethical or like, laudable reason. It's just because the one thing I can't stand more than bugs is the thought of crushing them and just like the residue on the shoe, stuff like that. Like, no thanks. So it's really good when you take sort of a bug article and you do something equally as weird and creepy and gross with it, like that one we read a few weeks ago about those little centipede robots that are sort of parasocially loved by lonely people in Japan. But this article doesn't really get that good. It kind of just takes that gross thing and then it kind of stays there and just plays with it for a little while. Yeah, I think the clinical tone here is acceptable. There are a few fumbles in here. I'd like to point out this pattern is less consistently true as larger numbers of cockroaches are terminated. Less consistently true is just, I don't know, it's kind of a fumble. Kind of stumble over that one. The logic of this also gets a little bit knotted. So the anomaly is clearly intended to keep the cockroaches of the site safe, right? I mean, if you're crushing it and then more come as a sort of retribution, obviously there's some sort of intentionality to that anomaly that wants to keep these cockroaches from being squashed, right? It's sort of a conditioned thing that the person squashing is supposed to get eventually. But when whatever this thing is that's punishing the people who step on the cockroaches, whenever that acts, that's when the logic of this article becomes somewhat knotted. The punishing effects themselves seem like they would cause more cockroach death, such as for example, spontaneous creation of an EF3 tornado that we see here happen. I imagine that an EF3 tornado would probably kill more cockroaches than someone stepping on them. And then this whole sort of logical problem that this article has is exacerbated in that the Foundation, through all of these experiments, after the EF3 tornado came by, it still does more testing. It continues to test at higher intensities, crushing more and more cockroaches in a given setting. So it just seems like that's a little unbelievable. I don't think that they would do that. Additionally, there's no really obvious effort to simply abandon the site to the cockroaches, which seems like something that would happen. It does happen eventually in the article, but it's the very, very last thing that's considered after all of this. And so it just seems like it's very contrived, very conveniently ignored until the author wants to acknowledge it, as opposed to abiding by what's believable inside the article. And then this credential lock here at one point introduces Wilson's Wildlife Solutions, kind of with this overt animal rights sort of messaging. For example, the following is a transcript received from Wilson's Wildlife. You're committing mass animal genocide with full knowledge. I don't crush bugs for the reasons I just told you, but I also wouldn't crush bugs just because they're bugs. I'm a little more, sympathetic to a different life form than just to crush it because it's different, or I think it's gross. But at the same time, I think, this perspective, calling it mass animal genocide, is probably a little too overbaked. It's probably a little too far gone. It's just a little bit absurd on its face. But it isn't absurd enough. If you wanted to make this sort of a ha-ha thing, like it doesn't quite get so absurd as to be funny. It just kind of stays in a strange spot of kind of absurd, and I'm left not sure whether I should take the author seriously, if they're actually thinking this, or if this is here because it's supposed to be funny, or if it's some sort of like coded sermon, some coded message. I think the article takes a very poor compositional turn when, in an even more intense testing log, the effect is that what is essentially a more killable Serpent's Hand version of Thor shows up to kill the Foundation personnel. So here it is. It's the Serpent Hand. It can control lightning, and then, of course, it itself is killed. So it's basically Thor it's easier killed. Shows up for some reason. So, honestly, all in all, the tumbling compositional logic of this article and the directions that it decides to take, I think, crippled this article and make it pretty pedestrian of a read. I felt as though it had a lot of potential that it just didn't know what to do with, and that got worse the longer the article stuck around. It probably could do with a lot of trimming, I would think. A lot of these testing logs, I think, are probably a little bit superfluous. And the length that it is pushed to from what is given, I think, is rather flimsy. There's a haphazard recruitment of a bunch of different GOIs, like we saw the Serpent Hand. There's Wilson Wildlife up here as well, that make it seem like sort of artificial padding. Like, what can I pull in here? What can I pull? How does this have anything to do with other GOIs? How can I make it have something to do with other GOIs? It just feels like stuffing that doesn't really add any solidity to the article, but makes it seem like it has more going on than it really does. I think the decisions here regress until the article adopts this sort of like Rounder Houseian one-line sort of punch stinger pseudo thing at the end. LMAO, get cocked on. And this is another GOI that's pulled in here, Gamers Against Weed, that has the final say, but for whatever reason, I don't know. I think the article could have been better if the author wasn't satisfied to make it pivot on this pun right here. That's really what the article comes down to. So instead of being a really good article like the one last that we saw with the architecture very cleanly pointing towards something, this is starting at a point and diverging outward, trying to fill it with that space with things. So, I think this would be better if we didn't have this at the end, if only for it being a very obvious tell that the author wanted to make an article based on this pun. I also think that it would benefit if we didn't cast sort of in a shotgun style all these different GOIs and POIs that come on stage, wave at the audience, but don't really do anything else. And I think also the Foundation could be made more intelligent here. That the intelligence of the Foundation that really is the par for the course when it comes to how we imagine the Foundation should operate. I think that should be made more robust. We're essentially watching an unintelligent Foundation personnel not listening to the most basic of reason and inferential logic all the way through this article. Until, again, we finally get to the end and they talk about relocating to a different site. Also, making the effects of stomping on the roaches a bit more imaginative and less crazed, I think would have been a better direction to handle this. Like, for example, we get the EF tornado, people just sort of die, all kind of wacky kind of stuff happens that you wouldn't expect. So I think keeping it a little more thematically taut would have done this article a little better. I think what's missed here is the opportunity for a real first-person delve into the personal experience of being in this site, living with these conditions, with these roaches all over the place that you cannot get rid of. They get worse the harder you try to get rid of them. So I'm pretty ambivalent towards this one. Shout out to the word, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, catsaridophobia. Catsaridophobia. This is a good time to pull up Brian. Will you say this for me?
Catsaridophobia.
Yeah, so that's the fear of cockroaches. So that's pretty cool. I think that's the only cool thing about this article. I don't recommend a read. I don't think you're missing out much. I think at a rating of 17, that's probably... I guess that's fair. Just because it does have some things going for it. All right, 6189. So this is a bundle of Davite sacrificial artifacts that were used to sacrifice members of Homo sapiens in order to turn the Homo Davia adults back into children. So if you're not familiar, the Davites, which are a GOI basically on the wiki, they're really a different species of Homo. Or is it a different genus? I can't remember right now. My brain is fried. But instead of Homo sapiens, it's Homo Deva. Okay. So this anomaly, as you can see, is a table-like setup, and each one describes a different artifact from an ancient Davite culture, and it's very clear through the description of these different elements in this sort of carousel of artifacts that they were all used to sacrifice people, to sacrifice Homo sapiens. And it implies that the reason for this was to sort of renew, sort of rejuvenate the youth and the vitality of, high-ranking Davites. So the constructs themselves are cryptic and compelling with numerous insertion points, I think, for the reader. There's a strike through in here that I'm not too sure about. It sort of is a non-starter of a sentence that for some reason is there. I don't know why that's there. And there's a little tad spice of technobabble, I think, through some of this. Trisemagist level thaumaturgic countermeasure apparatus, TCA, stuff like this. But past that, I mean, there's excellent clinical tone here. There's excellent descriptive prose in these tabs, particularly when it talks about each one of these artifacts. Very, very, very well done. It pulls off some Series 1 sensibilities, such as an active state and a dormant state. You can see that here with the active and the dormant of many of these sub-designations, not just one. There's a couple that sort of have this like active and dormant kind of vibe to them. The article plays with themes of ritual sacrifice and a barbarism with sort of mixed with like 6,000 contest nature vibes. And I think one of the most enjoyable things about this article that I just never, ever, ever see, and so it's so refreshing to see, and it's so nice. I want to make a note to call it out, is that this article has a gorgeous vocabulary. I mean, it has just a miraculous vocabulary. There are so many words in this that I did not know. Palmately, twill, celebrants, rivulets is a word that I knew, but that is just a beautiful word, not often used. Wattle and daub, thatched, retinue, panoply, beers, interdict, I mean, all these are terms that I had to look up. It really brought out the search, the Google, and the dictionary, and it was just such a delight after delight of learning new words. It's really a luxury article, in my opinion, for more reasons than that, but it's just so nice. So, the artifacts have an eerie connectivity, suggesting a slightly uncovered logic, something like a paleontology dig. They're creative and interesting enough to encourage the read through all these subdesignations, which on the first glance can be a little intimidating of a task. But really, the wonderful description and the wonderful sort of world building and mood painting through these different tabs really keep the read going pretty effortlessly. It does all of this, I think, by a conservatism of anomalous attributes, with some of these items here being only vaguely anomalous, only vaguely relevant. For example, there's one that's basically its only anomalous treatment is just a mild elevation of Hume levels. Others don't really have a lot of anomalous things going on at all, and they're just included because they were in the proximity or seem to be in the functional proximity of the other ones. But each one has very vivid descriptions without getting too pedantic or babbly, and there's a really nice sense of tactical omission of information, such as in this -7 section. And they all lead naturally into more exposition and more narrative placements. And they create this continuity of time connecting what is evidently a very, very old ritual to the modern day continuance of it. So this article just has a wonderful command of really great scales of time and really gripping very extreme ends of that scale in one place very, very succinctly. So it just does a fantastic job. Once again, I think I've said this before, but just incredibly above average clinical tone, very, very above average. That really masters the line between a removed clinical tone and a more traditional methods of narration, such as if we go back to this section up here, the contents of each ampule are still liquid and swirl gently when the ampule is disturbed. I mean, that's not easy to do. Very, very cool. Very, very cool when you mix that sort of clinical tone with sort of these subjective sort of moments. Very hard to do. Very, very well done. There's even a passable use of redacted in here somewhere that I can't find, but it's nice to see those done well. The grammar is impeccable. There's no misspellings that I noticed. I didn't really see one real error, so that's, once again, not common. So just a ton of polish on this article. The characterization of the Foundation also is excellent here. They're supremely professional and very emotionally level-headed. For example, in this forward section here, this is not a posture that's regularly assumed in the Foundation these days. We could point just as recently to the immediately previous article to make that point, I think. Okay. Having praised this article, let's talk about what is bad about it, I think, what it gets wrong, which is not much. I do think it makes sort of over-enthusiastic scientific attempts, like it does the dreaded approximately thing where it says approximately, but then gets very, very specific. It does this with measurements as well. Wonder if it does it approximately. I guess it just does it there. I thought there was a measurement too, but it looks like it's just only once. But that's what I'm talking about. It gets really, really detailed. Approximately, and then it specifies to, I guess, the minute, so whatever. And then there are some capitalization inconsistencies. So I saw Hume show up a few times, and one time it was maybe capitalized and one time it was not. Same thing with actual Davite itself. So the word Davite sometimes is capitalized and sometimes it is not. So these are very small things. I also don't think that the active internal monologuing of things like footnote 3, where we have basically a speculative statement here, a question, and even in 4 as well. I don't think those are really helpful things. They sort of interrupt what is a heavy mood, not in a good way. And then I think footnote 6 lacks punctuation. There's no period at the end, and that's not usually a problem. You can always do your footnotes your own way, but if every other footnote has punctuation in it and one doesn't, that's obviously something that you missed. And then I think if I could say one other thing about it, and once again, I'm kind of reaching here because this article is excellent. One of the best ones that I've read in the last 2 weeks. I think it's a little too long. I think fatigue starts to set in despite the interest here during the collapsible of this sketch analysis. Part of this is due to the heavy clinical tone, sure, which again is excellent. But as Emperor Joseph II noted to Mozart, there's just too many notes. The ear can only hear so many notes in one evening. That's kind of the way I feel about this. It's just a little too heavy, a little too dense at times. I also think that what's really happening here, sort of the show and not tell, what's really behind the purpose of all of these rituals is sort of suggested a tad too strongly, to where it's pretty easy to figure out what all this was doing, even as early as the -1 tab. It's pretty obvious, and that's not, once again, necessarily a problem. It's just that the rest of the article sort of feels like it's trying to keep that information from you or finesse that from you, and so it just doesn't play as well as it could, because once again, I think it comes off a little too obviously too early on, and you can kind of see it coming. So while perhaps intentional, that sort of does dampen, I think, the nice tensive buildup that happens during the read. That there's this some looming and to be explicit reveal, and actually we don't even ever get that. That's, I think, another thing about this article that I think was a odd little odor about it, is that it sort of seems like the whole time it's gonna build up to this reveal, and it never actually does. So I know that's kind of contradictory to say that it gives too much and that it doesn't give us the actual exposition that we may be looking forward to. But I think maybe it's a structural thing. I think if you took sort of the hint, nudging of this -1, put it a little towards the end, that would be a little more satisfying of a bang to end us off with. The incident log here is what ends the article. It's terribly tragic. There's really a smirked use of data expunged here, but once again, it does it well. I ultimately think what the author has in mind here can be spoken. I don't know if we needed the data expunged here. I'm not too sure. It's not exactly clear why we would data expunge what is suggested by this data expunged here. But hey, I guess it's just the author's decision. It does sort of have a note at the end. It's really an email. But having said that, having this be sort of a note at the end thing, it's done just masterfully. There's no other word for that. It does exactly what a note at the end should do. It ties everything together in a nice bow, but without handing it to the reader with an insecurity, worrying about it not being noticed or received properly. It's just a very, very well done way to end this. So all in all, SCP-6189 is just, in my opinion, an ineffably constructed and delivered experience of an article with it just disturbingly evocative imagery that mixes sort of an animalistic elegance into it. It's just such a great example of just doing a classic dish correctly with proper treatment. I mean, the title of this article is Ritual Paraphernalia. That's really all it is. It's very seemingly one note. It's very simple. It's not trying to be bombastic, but it just takes those really common ingredients and just does really, really good stuff with it. So I think at 28, this is just horrendously underread and underappreciated. This is a luxury article. This is a Bentley of an article, and I think we're living in a world where people would rather upvote hot rods and Hot Wheels while we're there. I do want to once again read good crit when I see it, call it out, give it some props. And so this one is Real Surreal Sir, which is a mouthful to say. Wow. and I'm reading now. This is honestly prime world building that effortlessly balances both just slightly veering off existing directions of the Deva while also carefully building off scattered, sometimes conflicting interpretations of the civilization, to the point of following and fleshing out subtle threats that have until now remained unaddressed. This is an immensely satisfying narrative and exercise in world building, which is incredibly difficult to pull off, even with the more simplistic base group or concept. I think that's very well said. Assertive Roland is the author. I was a little worried when I saw that Grigori Karpin and Harry Blank gave this feedback. Obviously, those people being premier Neo-Law Foundation authors, but who also have a finesse about them and a maturity to their ability to write that I think we see the best of in this article. So yeah, I definitely recommend this article. Once again, this is a Lamborghini sitting in a parking lot surrounded by neon colored Honda Civics that are souped up. And I think most people who are voting and consuming this literature on this site, are sort of giddy by the souped up Honda Civics with their loud exhaust pipes, and they're so distracted by them, and they're so taken and duped by them that they don't notice that there's a Bentley, there's a Lamborghini sitting in the parking lot with them. So, all right, we got a couple more articles. We are not quite done, so let's go to SCP-6907, and let's hope that this one is here. 17th of May. All right. Yeah, this article. This article. Never have I seen an article that got off to such a good start, but then completely just shit itself. It totally shit its pants. Like while on stage, like publicly, like in a spotlight. So what is this article? So this is basically a god that is prophesized to appear in the future at some point. So the first page is where all the good parts are, and then you can view an updated file, and that's really where everything goes wrong. So in the first one, there's pretty good clinical tone. The quoted box here captures a nice amount of poetics while not sounding too contrived. The anomaly is sufficiently mysterious and foreshadowing, and stages sort of an immediate and inevitable tension between this warning that the Foundation has given of this upcoming manifestation of this god, and this also warning from this quoted passage that tells anybody to not get in the way of the god that's going to manifest. So there's this automatic tension between the Foundation obviously wanting to get a leg up on this and to contain this thing whenever it does appear, and this one message that they've gotten that tells them to not try something like that, just to not get in the way. So that's the good part about this. There's a lot of detail in that first page that we don't need to see. Then we're taken to the second version, the updated version of the file, the real one, which is kind of the same view of the same anomaly, but now we're in that future. So this thing has manifested, and we're looking back at that event and also the things that have happened since. So I think that's probably the best part of this article, where it pivots like that, where the first part kind of builds. It's like this giant crescendo of like tension. And then we get to the second article, the updated one, and it takes us sort of well into the future, where we're now looking at that same moment from as it is in the past. So I think that's a real clever pivot, just like structurally, like architecturally. But I think that's it. I think it really, really, really starts to suffer after that. So we'll get into a little bit as to why. So I'm not just being mean, essentially. But the entity that appeared lets us know, or really, sorry, this actual version of the article lets us know that actually two of these godlike entities appeared, not just one, as the one that was expected. There's actually a second one that shows up. And so it does detail the features of the second unexpected one. there are these type whites, which are basically gods, basically deities, that manifest in the United States in 2014. So previously we were told that wherever these things manifested, it would then go on to kill the leader of that region. And so these manifest in the United States in 2014. So we might want to tell Obama to watch out, I guess. And the second one here manifests in, I think, a Foundation site, the site that's supposed to contain the first one. So, yeah. The recovery log is next. Starts with a transcription of what seems to be like a pre-assault pep rally talk from the Mobile Task Force commander. This is really what I think begins the sharp decline of the article in terms of compositional sophistication, in terms of characterization, in terms of actual writing. I don't think this is a coincidence, because if you notice, this is the first time that the author tries to exit a staunchly clinical tone approach. This is the first time that we really get out of clinical tone and get into something else. Once again, this being sort of people's dialogue. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think this author is really, really good at the clinical tone, and then is not good at the other things. And it's unfortunate that this article mainly relies, as you can see as I scroll through the length of this, primarily on those other things. I think I just accidentally closed something I shouldn't have closed. Let's see. Let's do it this way. So, there are some really cliche-heavy lines. Like, for example, in this pep rally that starts off this recovery, you have literal lines like this. I have to say, I've never seen a finer group of men and women. It fills me with pride that I was able to meet each of you, even though our time together was brief. There's even a Godspeed, you beautiful bastards, right there. So, I mean, these are bad lines. Just no other way to say them. Especially compared to the sophistication of the clinical tone we just got through. I mean, it baffles the sensibilities that these lines would be in here. They're just bad. We have some dialogue next. The first entity, the first type white entity, is being talked with. And this really brings out the Mary Sue elements that so far had been kept minimized by the removed clinical tone. But in short, this section reads exactly like a Dragon Ball Z episode script. The -1 is instantly a douche with sort of smirkingly cartoonish tones of ha 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 evil. The dialogue gets just rapidly childish. For example, when the transcriptionist types in a nose injury into the entity's dialogue. So let's look at that, just because it's hard to describe without actually seeing it. So the person who's transcribing this dialogue, the person who works at the Foundation who's transcribing this, decides to include things like "wha, huh, why my nobe bleeding, did you make a new crossbow?" So the entity got hit in the nose, and of course the nose is plugged, and that is being written into the dialogue here. So that's just terrible. This angle continues until it just gets alarmingly bad. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Take this ending to the transcript, for example. Let's do this. The entity, the -1 entity, holds its hands in the air and begins slowly walking out of the crater as if it is surrendering. As it nears the top of the crater, it slips on a patch of mud. Falling directly onto its face and sliding back down to the bottom of the crater, it begins openly crying and punching the mud. So, I mean, this is basically Yajirobe kind of stuff. Basically this guy who we're watching be a goofball. Just not good. So then there's an intake interview that I'm already dreading. It's the last place I really want to go in the article right now after being introduced to this -1 character. Yeah, so this try-hard zaniness really comes off as an unconvincing switcheroo to what was presented as sort of a high-gravity situation. The -1 character is stiff, speaking like every other garden variety higher intelligence that we've seen since Star Trek's Data, for example. As expected, this interview has sitcom level lines, such as the Foundation psychologist, Dr. Erickson, who whispers, "Just 4 more years until pension." So this is one of the more whiplashing sort of experiences I've had reading an article. It sort of whiplashes Neo-Law Foundation very, very quickly. At least most Neo-Law Foundation articles are proud of themselves as, what they are from the get-go and don't slip under the radar as something more passable or dramatic. After this interview, we get to gratuitous exposition, as if the author ordered a prepackaged and manufactured bento box of an article. The dialogue is just god-awful. The character writing is just absolutely terrible. Let's give another example here. The Anomaly asks, "What's this?" Dr. Erickson says, "Oh yeah, I guess plastic is pretty new. It's just what we use for bottles now. It's more flimsy than glass, but it's fine." And the instance is like, okay. So I think these are supposed to be cute moments, but they're not. The ends of these addenda feel like they're written by just someone who's not very good at writing the ends of addendas. And I'll let just one more passage that we'll look at kind of speak for itself. Hey, why are we here? Yeah, it's kind of what I'm asking too. And then this article ends. This is very painful to get through, by the way, all of this dialogue. The article ends on the line "son of a bitch." So I hope that speaks for itself, because I'm kind of done talking about this article. I think it's a miserable read. I don't think you should waste your time on this. It's very long. If you want to check this article out, I recommend you check the first page out and then just stop, because once you click this next one, it's nauseating. I do like the use of the type white. I think that's pretty cool. I think there are moments, once again, where the clinical tone of this are really, really good. But there's just this gross unevenness to this article. Like I said, the first part is great. The second part is just god awful. It's really nauseating, very disorienting. Just stunningly bad decision making, I think, by the author. So I can't recommend this one. I think it's pretty awful, pretty awful. Okay. And I think that's about it. There's maybe a couple more, so let's get to that. On my notes here, I'm reading SCP 6455, which is Storm Breath. We did that last 2 weeks ago. That was a really, really good article. Holy shit. Okay. Next one is the 18th of May. This is 6144. So let's do this one. We're about, we have, I think, 3 or 4 left. We're almost done. This has been a long show. 6144. So this is an anomalous cinnamon tree that can cause the collapse of the U.S. economic system via the stock market if it's not placated. So that's, there's a lot going on in this article, just right there. It seems a bit out there, and it is, but you ain't seen nothing yet, because look at the conprocs. The conprocs are just outstandingly specific. They're delivered in the first person of the anomaly itself at times, even. The procedures themselves are so pedantic as to be absurd and nearly funny, but they are creative enough and obtuse enough to excuse the overt specificity with which they're written. Some of these seem kind of anomalous in themselves. Like one of these demands that you have a reality bender show up, so that's kind of interesting and complicated at the same time. Really, this article ends up being a pointed, still somehow understated jab at the American economic machine, which, if you know anything about, doesn't make a lot of sense, and it also speaks to how fruitless and excessively ridiculous it is to try to keep such a system afloat. I think the topic here is pretty handsome, kind of high concept without being pretentious, talking about things like the economy. It does have proper footnote placement to explain some of the more technical points of things that have happened in the recent while. For example, the explanation of what the Lehman Brothers' role was in the 2018 start of the Great Recession. Things like that, as well as really, there's a healthy and impressive understanding of statistical analysis here too that I appreciate. I think the anomaly itself has a flaw in the description. It tells us that the anomaly causes the economy to crash, but it should have a line specifying that the crash occurs if the containment demands are not met. I didn't see that in there. It just says that it can collapse the stock market. It doesn't tell us that it's if these procedures are not followed. So that's a personal decision on the part of the author, but I think it's enough to kind of be distracting, in my opinion. There's a little bit of more makeup applied when we get down to the bottom, and "Are we cool yet?" is invoked. So questions as to why this is a cinnamon tree or why are the containment procedures this crazy, this all sort of get dissolved because, hey, this is art, and then there's a really interesting section here. There's sort of an inside scoop to a keynote exhibition of an "Are we cool yet?" gathering. And I think this is really sort of an untapped vein in the writing here on site. Rarely do we see sort of transcriptions of the event itself when it comes to "Are we cool yet?" Sort of settings. I think there's really a lot of wild imagination and sort of anomalous chaos that can happen in these sort of settings. And so it's nice to see this happening here. It's just not something that I see a lot of. I think the exposition here takes a sort of first people's turn and gets a bit preachy about justice being done. And it kind of starts to make sense why we see a spice tree as the anomaly. It's sort of supposed to be this sort of justice gotcha that harkens back to the spice trade, which is something that got America started, I guess. So to put this in the character's own words, we can see the author speaking very clearly through the character. A construct that will ruin both the sins of the fallen kingdoms and the kingdom ruling over us in the present. I have some more philosophical babble about capitalism, symbolism, inspiration, other shit like that, but I'll save that for the discussion block afterwards. So we're getting a little too transparent, I think, a little too pointed just right there. And so it gets a little, I hate to use the word woke, but it kind of gets a little woke. And even the praise in the article itself doesn't seem to be very substantial, just with almost like one word praises. So, I recommend you read it because it's really zany. The author states clearly that they were trying to make overly convoluted containment procedures. So I think that's worth looking at. It does it pretty well. It also has some other problems, like why the Foundation wants so badly to uphold the U.S. stock market. That's not really adequately explained, is sort of taken for granted and ran with. But yeah, so I think if you agree with the sort of preachiness of it, or you don't mind it, I think there's more substance to the article than just the mechanism of anomalous action. I think it tries a little too hard to do that sometimes, but I think it ultimately comes off pretty well. So I do recommend it. It's wacky without breaking character, and is relatively short. So, all right, last three, 6853. This is an unbranded portable gaming device that is indestructible and has compulsion effects. Really, we have the most bland and generic conprox ever. It feels like the author is one of those types that just wants to get it over with as quickly as possible, and feels the best treatment for conprox is just to throw it into the trash bin. Footnotes 1 and 3 tell us that this article is part of a series of anomalous gaming device sort of things that the author is trying to work into the site, kind of as if to be a GOI, I think. I think the only redeeming part of this is the compulsion for the subject to eat batteries. That's pretty interesting. There's no need for these 3 pictures up here. I don't know why we have 3 of them. Really, 1 will do. There's some pretty average clinical tone in here with some really bad moments. such as the consumption of high levels of AA batteries typically leads to blockages in the esophagus and poisoning from possible batteries splitting, which I don't know. That doesn't really read well for me. And then this line. It was sold by the mother of yada yada as part of an estate clean out. Talking about an estate sale, I guess. Death to a pica eating disorder. That also, once again, people trying to play medical stuff usually doesn't work well. Not pretty familiar with it. So pica is, in addition to being a unit of measurement, is also a craving to choose substances that have no nutritional value. You see this a lot in pregnancy, nutritional deficiencies, stress, psychological disorders, and things like this. So pica. So it is an eating disorder. You don't have to say pica eating disorder. It's like saying bread pizza. A pizza implies that there's bread. You don't have to, or like cabbage kimchi. Like kimchi is already cabbage. You don't have to specify that. It's really redundant. So anyway, that's a small note that no one cares about but me. So I think the worst part about this article is the desire to make a GOI or a character canon out of this gaming company that the author has situated in multiple articles by now. It comes off as too strong, too pungent, almost like too much perfume. This whole article really barely escapes the most trite motions of Series 1 articles. It doesn't really have any added charm or invention to it that would elevate it beyond a Series 1 article, although the author in the comments specifically states that they wanted it to be a Series 1 article. So it's a short article, but I just don't recommend you read this unless you have a particular nostalgia for gaming devices or Series 1 or a mix of the two. But even then, I don't think the article really plays the nostalgia very effectively. I think it sort of just presents those two things as is, and then just kind of moves on. I do also think that T. Rutherford does a great job here. I get that you were aiming for a classic SCP feel, but even those classics with the exact same structure still had to leave an impact. This doesn't. That, and it hits on too many old cliches. It's indestructible, it has compulsion effect, and it's deadly. So you sparked my curiosity, pun intended, with the battery consumption, but that was really it. So I think that's pretty well said. It just doesn't do a lot. It plays it pretty straight, and I can't recommend that one. It's just not even worth the read, despite how short it is. This next one is CN143. I'm not going to say a lot about this. It's a really, really long article. It's got a lot of collapsible work. There's a second offset that gets a little ridiculous with the 05 being invoked when they don't really need to be. They don't really have the justification for it. You have these really stupid sort of live journal poetry-esque conclusions for the mimetic kill agent that I think don't work very well. And then you have these really dumb collapsible within collapsibles, each sort of reeling the reader out without cutting the string, although it should have done that long time ago. These like just completely hapless CSS tricks to get you through the rest of it. And by the way, if you happen to read a lot faster than these are popping up, it's also obnoxious. But each of these little things in the collapsibles are really uneventful. They're not very interesting. They don't really push the article forward. They don't really push the plot or the characters forward. And then, of course, this is really, really hackneyed and trite because we're getting sort of a message from the anomaly itself straight to us, kind of thing, which is just it's so overdone. I see that so many times when it comes to like an anomalous humanoid entity that is some other species, that's misunderstood, and they take the time to compose a directed letter to whatever. So let's go back to the actual article. So this is a species of reality-bending cat girls that are trafficked and that somewhat go rogue. It's a really difficult article to get through. Not only is it very, very long, not only does it probably rely a little too heavily on the visuals and the CSS, especially when it comes to an asymmetry with the actual content that it has to offer. it's pretty uninteresting material all the way through, and it takes really this creepy, and not in a good way, this sort of parasocial sexual obsession with cat girls, and really barely does anything else with it. The dialogue is rickety and it's ultra cliched. Search here. Your parents. Your parents are worried about you. Those cat girls are affecting your mind. You're becoming confused. Give up, or this will end badly for you. I mean, there's a lot of sort of like macho, like sort of like vibes coming from these characters that just doesn't play well. There's a lot of mobile task force centric action sequences that read like the worst tactical fanboys playtime script. It's just absolutely don't read this. I mean, let's go to the comments just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that are in here that are problematic. Human trafficking, not even mentioning the fact that these are minors. This is describing minors as beautiful, perfect ladies who make real women look worse. By comparison, you can see the issues right here. Just, this person says it well. Awkward tone aside, this is just bad vibes all around. So I don't recommend you read this article. It's just a pretty bad offering, and I think it's safe and fair to say that it's a waste of your time. All right, the very last article for tonight, and then we'll be caught up. We'll have caught up to the SCP Wiki throughout all of its issues with WikiDot and whatnot. Okay, so this is SCP-6178, and this is a cognitohazardous set of posts on speculative asset forums that use a lot of buzzwords and flash without actually saying anything. And when I say assets forums, I'm talking about what this article talks about. Communities involved with cryptocurrencies, stock trading, and the exchange of NFTs, basically. So I like the layout of this. Obviously, I'm not a fan of ACS. We'll ignore that. But the imagery here is well chosen. I think it really sets up the whole medical realism of this article that's carried well into the description, which has a pretty advanced clinical tone, I would say. The conprocs of this tell us that it is the anomaly is the product of a person of interest. And we can kind of take from this that it's probably someone who's running sort of like a financial pump and dump or some sort of Ponzi or pyramid scheme. The people who fall prey to this cognitohazard have, we find out, a total cessation of their body functions, and they eventually die. But they have this paradoxical increase in neuronal activity at the same time. So that's sort of an interesting thing that the author introduces that sort of sustains itself throughout the whole article, I think. The supplied example of this, which is this collapsible right here, makes it very, very clear, I think, that whoever is designing this anomaly is meaning for it to be sort of a Trojan that sort of hijacks and recruits in a Ponzi scheme-like manner, not poorly invested money from people, but poorly invested thought power. Brain bandwidth is essentially what you get from this collapsed file here. So there's a personal researcher log directly after this that seems to not get what is pretty evident in here in the collapsible just before it. So it makes, although the chronology of these things can be, sort of disconnected, not strictly sequential, it does make the read a little bit disengaging and feel a little bit artificial. So it's very apparent what's happening by this point, and we get to the researcher who's completely oblivious to it, assuming that they've seen this. So it's just kind of like it seems a little bit artificial. I think less info needs to be given by the author to where this is a bit more nebulous as to what is happening here with the anomaly and why it is that the neurons are upregulated while the body essentially dies, so that we can think alongside this researcher here, instead of already know what is coming and just essentially watching and waiting on the researcher to catch up in this whole section here. This was especially obvious at this representative number here that they pull out, which is, for anyone who's familiar with this stuff even a little bit, is very obviously a blockchain hash. And then, by the way, we don't see this right now because I'm on desktop, but on mobile, this number kind of breaks the format and sticks out awkwardly to the side. But I think besides that, there's some pretty good, believable commentary from the researcher here. There's a little bit of horrific detail in regards to the brain death effect and watching that happen to other people. That's nice to see here. There's some questionable formatting decisions. I'm not a fan of the sparse bolding, that's sitting over here, here and there. I think the article would be better without those. And I also think that the incident right here gets a little ham-fisted. So it's fine to essentially have the people as brain power batteries, sort of be, definitively unplugged or decommissioned when the jig of this Ponzi scheme is up. But I mean, to have them cryptically write words on the wall just before they die in their own body fluids, I mean, it's just a bit eye-rolling. And then the very end does add an extra and interesting vector to the cognitohazard that's being played throughout this that justifies something curious that was read in the conprox. And that line was here it is, conprox. Corpses of subjects should not be subjected to autopsy or brain scans. That really isn't filled out. That isn't really filled in until the very ending of this. And so I do love it when the article does that. It finally answers, what by this point in the article is a remote and easily forgotten question, like that one little phrase in the conprox. I think that's pretty cool. I like how that plays. So now I think there's a couple of things to nitpick here. So the author sort of anticipates my doing this in the comments when they say that, hey, if anyone comes to this thread and tries to explain to me that I got something wrong about how cryptocurrency works, know that you're very funny. Well, I do happen to know something about how cryptocurrency works, and so I'm going to be funny and nitpick just a little bit. But so the method of consensus, the method of cryptological consensus that is being cast in this article, which, by the way, seemingly Bitcoin is the stand-in for all other cryptocurrencies when it comes to this article. That's fine. That consensus mechanism is called proof of work. Not all cryptos abide by that. So I guess we're just dealing with proof of work cryptos. And then when you understand what's happening here, basically so you have to understand that proof of work, which is, once again, the consensus mechanism for Bitcoin. It's how people decide who gets money. It's how people decide. It's how everything is determined, is this consensus mechanism. It's called proof of work. And it's called proof of work because you, as a computational thing, have to work through an algorithm to find an answer. And basically what happens is that you're... The protocol spits out a number like this, or some sort of combination of numbers like this, and that is a coded sort of result that pops out of the end of what's called a SHA-256 cryptography algorithm. And anyway, the point is that you are desperately, as a computational machine, trying to just run countless simulations of is this the right combination of characters or not, and you just do that over and over and over again so fast, and the one that actually guesses this correctly, that finally determines what this correct sequence of numbers and letters are, gets to mine the block of Bitcoin and gets to add the block onto the blockchain. Okay, that's how that works. So the name of the game is to have the fastest, most powerful computation. It's to amass the most computational power, period, because the more you have, the quicker you will be able to guess and deduce what this number is by essentially trial and error. So that's why these people in this article are having their bodies shut down but their brains upregulated, is because when they see this cognitohazard, they're basically being trapped into becoming really the hashing power for whatever this person of interest is, and their attempt to find this sequence of numbers quicker, which is interesting because there's a whole thing called ASICs, and this is a specific type, not ASICs, the shoe. There is application specific integrated circuit. It's called an ASIC, and that is really a computer that has been intentionally designed to only do the SHA-256 blockchain computation. Okay, it's stripped down. It's the only thing it does, and it does it incredibly fast and well. So we're talking about guessing numbers like this, which no human can do. Which no amount of human computational power can even get close to doing in a reasonable amount of time. Of course, the guessing of these numbers in the Bitcoin protocol is highly competitive. And so you would never get humans to do this. I mean, I don't care if you recruited everyone on the planet, they still wouldn't be able to find this number computationally quicker than what is extant out there in the form of ASICs solely dedicated to decrypting this SHA-256 cryptography algorithm. So that's a little bit of a strange thing to put in your article. I get that it doesn't care about those kinds of things and is sort of trying to make this, sort of a horror application of these things. So, but that's just my nitpick. I mean, I do think that if you're going to tackle a difficult subject like cryptocurrency, especially one that's not very well represented in the space of SCP, they tend to equate crypto technology. Cryptocurrency is essentially cryptography applied to finances. So that's all it is, really. And there seems to be somewhat of a really bad rep for cryptocurrency, for NFTs, and obviously for good reasons in the SCP space. But anyway, so just because I do know a little bit about blockchains, I decided to highlight this number, which is a hash, which is a unique individual identifier. It's like a wallet address, and plug that into a blockchain explorer. And I was satisfied with what I saw because if you plug this in, you get an actual Bitcoin block that was mined, and it's the looks like the 700,000th Bitcoin chain added into the blockchain, and that was done in September 2021. The person who successfully solved this cryptology puzzle with their SHA-256 computational power, which does cost quite a lot of electricity, by the way, earned a total of 6.25 Bitcoin, which in today's terms is just under $200,000. And the block that was mined contained over 1,200 transactions and amassed, let's see, how much money. It shows you things like difficulty, so the mathematical value of how hard it is to find that number for this block. Difficulty algorithm changes depending upon how much hash power there is in the protocol globally. You can look at things like the Merkle root, which is an interesting little cryptological instrument that they use. This is the specific hash, the wallet address for this. A total of 49,000, almost 50,000 Bitcoin were sent in this block, which in today's terms averages to about $1.5 billion in this block. So, this is the cool thing about a blockchain is that it's triple ledger technology. It's transparent. Everybody can verify. You don't have to trust anybody. You don't have to trust the bank, for example, to keep track of what money they owe you and you owe them. It's decentralized and everybody can see it. So anyway, I think this article is a good educational read all in all. I mean, my nitpicks aside, which is basically just me being masturbatory about my own understanding of cryptocurrency and stuff. I do have a lot of Bitcoin, so go fuck yourself. But yeah, so this is a nice educational read despite those shortcomings. I think it has that sweet spot in terms of length. It does a very good job with the idea that it works with. It has this nice kind of anxiety and this ominousness that comes from the unknown, which, like I said, in this case is sort of the big scary field of cryptology as it is applied to finance, aka cryptocurrency. Once again, as a rule, SCP generally finds this stuff to be things of severe distress or displeasure. So it kind of plays off the demographics there, but I think it does some pretty good justice to the field. Like, for example, this little detail, this actually being a valid Bitcoin hash, is pretty cool, in my opinion. The author seems to have more than just disdain to to cryptocurrency. I think things like bear market is a little eye rolly, little too ham fisted there. But I think all in all, this article strikes a nice balance. It does make some rudimentary mistakes in the knowledge here, but I think the character is believable enough, and I think it's odd that the neurologist is being cast to figure this out without having any expertise in something like finance or cryptocurrency or whatever. Seems like, just getting a neurologist because this is a brain thing is sort of short-sighted. You should probably get somebody who also is, somewhat of an expert in the other context that's happening here besides just neurology. But, these are small things for the article. I think it's definitely worth a read, and maybe you'll learn something about cryptocurrency. Maybe it'll become a little less scary. I think at a rating of 27, this is pretty good. So, okay, well, this has been a long show. We had a couple guests on. Harmony helped us out. I hope the audio was fine with that. I think we may have had an echo again, so I apologize about that. Hopefully that's fixed. Almer Duck came by after that, helped with some of the articles from this week. And then I just finished up the articles from last week before the wiki went down. So we are caught up, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I really appreciate y'all checking these out. They're a labor of love, a lot of work, but I really like reading containment fiction. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I have a lot to say about it generally. So I do appreciate the views. And if anybody who is in the space who would like to come on and take on 3, 4 articles, whatever, a couple articles, or as many as you would like, and do what I do. I'm always looking for help. Obviously, this is a huge time sink. It's a very time-consuming thing to do. And also, people who are really, really into this space, I like to hear their thoughts. I like to have them do this. I think we should all be working to have all of these articles read on a pretty consistent fashion. So shout out to people like T. Rutherford, who I see commenting a lot on recent articles these days. Sword Lover 87, I think, does the same thing recently. So just really good work. And, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find people who care about this stuff more than these sorts of people have mentioned. So that's it for tonight. This has been an extra long one, 3 hours and 30 minutes. My God, my brain is dead. I'm surprised I haven't passed out or, thrown up or pooped on myself, but I haven't, so that's good news. And if you would like to join us, we do our main show, which is SCP Meta. That'll be tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. That is for about an hour. We talk about kind of what's been happening in the space. That is a live call-in show, so you can call that. The number's on the bottom of the screen. It's 316-444-3115. And you can call, let your voice be heard. We take trolls. We take questions, we take comments, we take criticisms, we take suggestions, just whatever you got in mind. Happy to hear from you. You can also call that number when we're not live and leave a voicemail, and we will check that voicemail out. If it's not offensive or just straight up vulgarity, we'll probably play it on the air too. So I want to thank you all for joining. Catch the replay. Very, very sorry if Harmony has an echo all over her portion, which is the first probably 20 minutes of the show. Thought I fixed that, but maybe I didn't. So, but I once again appreciate you being here. And this has been SCP CRNP, aka Lack of Lepers, and I will catch you next time. Take it easy. Peace.